April 5th, 2016. This is an original live Tuesday broadcast. I'm your host, Alex Jones. We're going to be here for the next 4 hours today. Coming up, we've got Leo Zagami on the latest with Vatican scandals, and boy, there have been a lot of them coming out. He's going to be popping in from Rome. Wayne Madsen, he's one of the big sources in the National Enquirer article about lying Ted Cruz and the D.C. madam. His number, reportedly by Radar Online and others, is in that data cache. There's a federal judge that's blocked the release of the names, but the phone numbers have been public for years. Obviously, Deborah Jean Palfrey was a listener of this show, the D.C. madam, and she was friends with Madsen. Madsen's also friends with her lawyer, and her lawyer is saying he may just ignore the federal gag order because it's public interest what Ted Cruz is up to and may release it. The lawyer is on Friday with Madsen again. I say again because Madsen's coming on today, investigative journalist for Infowars.com, to break all of this down for us. And look, I've been working with Wayne for 18, 19 years. He's been working with us for about a year as a liaison writer and correspondent, officially getting paid some and having his expenses taken care of when he travels around to cover things like the mysterious death of Scalia. And he said, looks like some type of secret society operation to me, looks like some type of a cult, Bohemian Grove deal. And he said that 2 weeks before it was in the Washington Post that indeed it was a secret society gathering. There were devil paintings on every wall. Paintings of devils murdering children. Little children's beds outside each bedroom in the hallway. I mean, it is a weird facility on that 20,000-acre ranch run by the former Black Op commander, top Obama donor that Obama made a special award just to give him. And then it turns out it's some weird spinoff of the Bohemian Grove, and Madsen literally called it. And he was on air via video Skype down there with David Knight, Joe Biggs, and others. And I'm like, really? You think it's a cultic? Come on. And then I started seeing the footage. And I was like, whoa. And then it comes out, it is a cult. It never ends, ladies and gentlemen. So that's the type of investigative journalist we have on the payroll around here. People that constantly make national news and constantly get proven right and accurate. He was the one that told us, 6, 8 months ago that Marco Rubio was shopping around a dossier on Cruz and his lady friends. And then it gets blamed on Donald Trump. It's just not what Donald Trump's doing. Donald Trump isn't running a dirty tricks operation. So he gets accused of it when Roger Stone comes on the show, whose partner at their political firm is now basically, according to Politico and the New York Times, really the new head of the campaign. They're doing a face-saving thing where the other gentleman, Lebowski, that's, pun intended, not actually Lebowski from The Big Lebowski, but another fellow with a similar name. The guy that's in all the trouble, supposedly grabbing the woman on the arm, looks like much too about nothing. He's kind of being sidelined, and now the whole hardcore camp that's actually won a bunch of big campaigns and stopped brokered conventions and things like that in 1980 are coming in. And they come out and demonize Stone when he comes on the show and talks about the fact that we need millions of people in Cleveland when they try to steal it, which is going to happen, to historically stand up and say, we're aware of the fraud you're engaged in. This is criminal. Follow the will of the voters. And then MSNBC, BuzzFeed, you name it, try to imply that it's a dirty trick and that we're trying to overthrow an election or that we're threatening violence when we've done no such thing. You're the people trying to sell stealing the election openly. And then David Knight will be anchoring the 4th hour today. And we'll obviously be having our reporters popping back in. I'm working on getting Joe Biggs separately, who's on the East Coast, where they start in one city and then travel all the way to New York, I guess, to confront Trump at Trump Tower. And he's been out there trying to cover the protest. And all he covered was a riot last night after a basketball game. So that video is up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. We're going to be going over some of that. Watch drunk sports fans riot. See fires on public streets. Zombies get excited over sports while their country collapses. Watch as the zombies, again, go crazy. So we'll give you details of exactly where that happened and what unfolded coming up a little bit later. And again, that was in Villanova, but we'll give you the details in Philadelphia coming up when Joe Biggs is able to join us and able to pop in on the broadcast. That's a pretty important story. I know he followed himself to InfoWars. I'm going to get some blurbs written by our writers up there to describe people, in text, what happened, what unfolded, because it's pretty newsworthy. Time and time again, our reporters are so overwhelmed with the amount of news they're actually gathering that they don't even write a story or put a bug on the videos that then go viral, which is fine. I'd rather just get the information out. But the story about the Black Lives Matter crowd spitting and stomping on the American flag and spouting all their racism against white people, that story is in scores of newspapers and publications. The Blaze, the Daily Caller, you name it, just everywhere. But it all just originated as a video on our site. And I'm not complaining. It's just so much of what we break, so much of what we get that's exclusives, we don't even ever really get the credit for. And it's important to get the credit so that we get more listeners, so that people come here and find the full truth of what's being broken down, not just little fragments of it, not just little pieces of it. But I'm kind of going off on a jag right now, because I'll be sitting there watching all this amazing footage. I'm like, where is this? I'll be just wondering and trying to discover for myself, where did this happen? Where's the crew now? Because they're just all over the country. And I got Richard Reeves over here, and I got Rob Dew and crew over here, and Joe Biggs over there. I mean, it is just it's a three-ring circus, and everybody's doing a fabulous job. We just all need to remember that InfoWars is on the cutting edge. InfoWars is under attack by the White House surrogates. We need the support now more than ever. Because quite frankly, I am running through our funds to be able to cover this election properly right now, and that's why it's more important than ever that viewers and listeners shop with the good guys at InfoWarsStore.com and InfoWarsLife.com, whether it's water filtration systems or non-GMO heirloom seeds, or whether it's shortwave radios, or whether it's Patriot apparel or the highest quality nutraceuticals. InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com. And by the way, Vitamin Mineral Fusion will sell out by tomorrow. We're going to hold back a little bit, obviously, for folks that are signed up for auto ship. When you're signed up for auto ship, and you can cancel anytime, you get 10% off. And none of our products ever run out, because we hold back reserves for folks, as you have to do, that are signed up for auto ship at a small surplus as well. So whenever you really need something and it's sold out for everybody else, you can go sign up for auto ship to get it and get 10% off. Also get free shipping on any order above or above $50. We have brought back the Hillary for Prison 2016 shirt, which I said was a limited edition. We've had 6 or 7 others I never brought back, but this was so popular, I brought it back and just updated it and added the term under 2016 till the end of time. So Hillary for Prison 2016, the classic campaign style shirt, and then it says for Prison 2016 till the end of time. And on the back, instead of it being in white saying Infowars.com, legalize freedom, it's now in red, Infowars.com, legalize freedom. And this too will be a limited edition shirt that will go out until the end of the election, or until she is put in prison. Either way, which may be never. I don't know. No, let's just say it'll be limited edition until the end of the campaign season, one way or the other. After the election, we will pull this new limited edition shirt. But who knows? We may just call for war crimes for her, a new shirt, for what happened, of course, in Benghazi and Syria and everywhere else. That's why when we come back, it's so incredibly rich in its irony that I'm going to be breaking it down. Hillary Clinton says Donald Trump, quote, is the recruiting sergeant for ISIS. And that's a George Soros talking point they've been putting out the last year. They've had the Pope spouting off and others saying similar things. He's the one that points out, along with Rand Paul, to his credit, and others, that Hillary Honcho ran the whole program at the State Department to turn Libya as a base of operations over to al-Qaeda. That's who we funded, our criminal government, illegitimate elements of it that run the country. And that they then sent them into Syria and other areas, and they changed their name to ISIS to confuse the public. And then she's saying, and I've got the clip coming up, she's saying that he is the recruiting sergeant. In fact, let's just play that now. Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump is the recruiting sergeant for ISIS. This is a clip from Business Insider. Here it is.
I think it was said just this week that the way Donald Trump talks about terrorism and his, very insulting language toward Muslims is making him the recruiting sergeant for ISIS. So you do have to walk a fine line here.
So no one in modern history has funded radical Muslims more than Obama and Hillary. No one has turned them loose. No one has overthrown allies like Egypt. No one has done things like this, really, in U.S. history. This is the most dastardly, underhanded, openly evil, out-of-control operation. Then with their cohorts in Europe, the other socialists and globalists, they bring in millions of the Muslims from the radical areas, military-age men, 80-something% of them, let them attack, and then tell everybody we've got to give our speech up or it's our fault they attack us. And that's what the government in Greece is saying. They're saying capitulate to the Muslims or they'll bomb us. That's the leftist plan teamed up with our enemies. All right, we do have a ton of guests obviously joining us today. We're going to look at the ongoing plan to implode Europe's sovereignty with Leo Gazami joining us for about 20, 30 minutes from Rome. We're going to also look at the latest numbers with the polls out of Wisconsin and other key races. We're going to look at the latest on radical Islam and its march towards expanding its caliphate. Also, a story up on Infowars.com. The links have now been discovered. Soros and Ford Foundation behind the Panama Papers. Financial elite hijack investigative journalism to attack Putin and to attack the International Football League, to attack millionaires, to attack nouveau riche and groups they don't control, which is exactly what I said was going on Sunday when it first broke, and now that's all been confirmed. When you see CIA-connected newspapers coming out and telling you they're going to expose offshore banking, give me a break, folks. It's a sick joke. It has snared Cameron's father, who's in banking, but it's legal and lawful to have offshore money. You can take your after-tax money and ship it overseas. The globalists want to get rid of that for most of the general public, so you have no way to get out of the country with your money. They've changed the laws here in the U.S. to do just that. So it's amazing how the big banks act like we shouldn't be able to keep any of our own money not in their system because they want to be able to tax it, they want to be able to regulate it, they want to be able to do these bail-ins like they've done in Cyprus and Greece and other areas where the big banks or foreign banks that claim they own part of your national debt, they just take money directly from your bank account or out of your check. And that's why they want to force automatic transfers. And this digital system doesn't make things easier. It's creating massive identity theft, you name it. And we first reported on this more than a decade ago because the big banking associations were calling for it. Now, the big 5 mega banks globally in the last 6 months have all called for ending cash as we know it. And they're calling for governments to get rid of $100 bills, $100, 100 euro, 100 pound notes. They are phasing it out. Here's a Zero Hedge article up on Infowars.com. Was there a run on the bank? J.P. Morgan caps some ATM withdrawals. I remember about 3 years ago, Drudge linked to our story from J.P. Morgan Chase, where they were telling people that we're going to charge you for more than $100 withdrawals and that we're going to make you get a special bank account to be able to withdraw cash where you pay special fees. We had letters from listeners that showed the letter in the letterhead, and then once we posted it, we were sent hundreds other scans and photos via email of other people's letters. And J.P. Morgan came out and said we were making it up and that they weren't doing it. No, they were doing a stealth introduction to see how big the backlash would be. Again, we broke. Go back to it. 6, 7 years ago, I forget the time, that Bank of America was starting a $5 per bank transaction, per debit card charge every time you use a debit card. Our news was out there, and a few months later, then it was confirmed by mainstream media. And again, I'm not talking about InfoWars always being cutting edge. It's just frustrating that we broke 2 years ago that they were completing the smuggling process, bringing illegals into the country. We broke that the Border Patrol was giving them vouchers and completing the smuggling process, and it took almost a year for the mainstream media to admit that was happening, and then nothing was done. And since then, it's expanded. And the Border Patrol aren't bad people. They want to do their job. It's crazy. And people say, well, don't be against the immigrants. I'm not against non-criminal immigrants, but you can't not have a border and then lie to people and say you don't because the president has some secret order on the books. There it is. Wells Fargo denies plan to charge customers for domestic deposits. That was another one they denied, yeah. There's another one you can find where it was a J.P. Morgan Chase. But here it is, Wall Street Journal. Will you believe it now? Chase ATMs to limit withdrawals for non-customers to $1,000 a day. And then we have another article here that they're actually ratcheting it up and expanding it to even their customers. So this is how they beta test with something that sounds reasonable and then radically expand it very, very quickly. Speaking of what's happening in the economy, U.S. trade deficit rises to a 6-month high of $47.1 billion for last month's numbers. There's some good news. March sees record gun sales. Panama Papers and Rich and Powerful respond to claim they hid billions offshore. We'll get to all of that, the latest on Trump, the latest on the campaign, and just how close are Obama and Google. You won't believe the answer. I think my audience will believe it. Wayne Madsen, investigative journalist, will join us at the third hour. He is an Infowars.com reporter, and he's one of the main sources out there investigating the Ted Cruz phone number, reportedly in the data dump of the D.C. Madam's phone numbers. So they may have killed her, but they didn't stop the phone numbers from getting out. And we are going to obviously have the D.C. Madam's lawyer, the late D.C. Madam's lawyer, on Friday with cutting-edge breaking news. I'm just going to leave it at that. And I'm not bragging when I point out that we're continually at the center of everything that's important in this country. It's just we understand the zeitgeist. We know what the globalists are up to. Just like Wayne Madsen said, this looks like Bohemian Grove. I sense Dick Cheney. I sense the occult. I believe this is an occult compound. And on air, I'm like, now, Wayne, I respect you, but let's be careful. Off air, I'm like, dude, I don't want to get sued. And then, boom, Washington Post, to get out ahead of it, he was part of a secret society set up from Bohemian Grove. On target. On target. On target. I mean, he was friends with Palfrey, the D.C. Madam. He got her on the show exclusively. I told her, I said, you better watch out and tell folks you're not going to kill yourself. In fact, we have that clip. You can just go to YouTube if you want to see it and just type in Alex Jones, D.C. Madam. You can hear the full interview a few weeks before she died. It was found beaten up and hung in her mother's shed. I'm going to be talking about that and recapping it all with Wayne Madsen in the third hour today, and then David Knight will host the fourth hour. Again, I host 3 hours every day. Then one of my great crew members or anchors hosts the fourth hour. Some days I host the fourth hour as well. There's just so much news, and a lot of stations wanted a fourth hour, so that's what we're doing. And down the road, we'll probably add more and more live hours as well if we're able to build the info war, because there's so much news breaking. We need to be live 24 hours a day, quite frankly. I just don't have the capital to do it and to be able to organize it. And quite frankly, there's not enough people out there that know what's going on who could actually host shows at that level and not engage in COINTELPRO or infighting or other mental illnesses that seem to plague so many other people in the Patriot movement. But we are moving towards that and having a big effect thanks to your prayers, your support, and more. Now, let me get into the whole Trump situation. First off, I want to finish with Hillary. Let's play that clip again. Hillary says Donald Trump is the recruiting sergeant for ISIS. Here is a clip.
It was said just this week that the way Donald Trump talks about terrorism and his, very insulting language toward Muslims is making him the recruiting sergeant for ISIS.
If you actually create ISIS out of al-Qaeda, fund them in Benghazi, give them the missiles, give them the weapons, give them $5 billion at least, let them launch chemical attacks to try to frame Assad and the Russians, You create a corridor out of Iraq and out of Saudi Arabia up through Syria into Turkey. So your ear gun can ship them all to Western Europe. You are the literal author. You wrote the book on funding modern al-Qaeda ISIS. You are their mommy. You're their milk cow. You give them their funding, their love, their protection. And then you blame Donald Trump, who said 5 years ago, don't be involved in the Syrian civil war because we're backing al-Qaeda and ISIS. By the way, before they even called it ISIS, Trump has good advisors from the Pentagon. They're patriots. The names of the people they listed, I looked them up. I knew who one of them was, and they're patriots. They're nationalist. They're for America. Trump revealed, he's revealed this before, but the news is saying he revealed how he's going to get Mexico to pay for it. Mexico gets, depending on the year, between $70 and $100 billion just in money transfers from people in the United States who have family in Mexico. And the Mexican government taxes that when it comes through. And Trump's saying, we'll put a tax on that if you don't build the wall. Now, let's be clear. The Mexican people don't get anything out of this. The elites are using Mexico like a outhouse or something. Our toxic waste is dumped there. They move the plants right over the borders so the coal plants run dirty. They force the people off their land to make them go work in these hellholes. Mexico City is 35 million people last time I checked. In the summer, the sky becomes black when the human excrement becomes a powder in the air. It is Soylent Green. And this is what globalism is, and this is what it'll do to our country and the exploitation of those people down there. So they're playing us all off against each other. But here's Hillary saying she's also the only candidate being attacked by Wall Street. She has gotten more money on record from Wall Street than all other candidates combined. And PolitiFact, even, who normally does a lot of twisting, has to say that she is pants on fire. Now, what PolitiFact does is sometimes they're really accurate. Other times they're not, but they have to be accurate sometimes or nobody would trust them. But yes, pants on fire, Pinocchio, 900-yard long nose. I mean, this is ridiculous. But again, there's another lie, even the way the question's asked. Hillary Clinton, quote, bashes Wall Street and capitalism like it's bad and evil for a company to have stock. That's how you build this country. That's how Europe got built. It's how the Renaissance got funded. Now, you can lose it in a bad company. It's a gamble. But it's a lot better than, look, stocks started in England, as everybody knows, about 600 years ago because you'd buy stock in a ship. And if you went in with 100 people and owned, 1/100th the ship or 1/20th or whatever, you went in. If you lost on average 10, 15, 20% of ships, it varied, on a mission, a trade mission, then you wouldn't go bankrupt if you just financed everything in one ship. So you pooled your resources, you hedged your bets. And then on the interesting story on the Gresham side of my mom's family, the family crest is a grasshopper. Well, I'm a direct male line from that, but then through my mother's line on the maternal, just interesting little tidbit of some of my English background, invented the stock exchange, the physical stock exchange, the first stock exchange in London, England. Pretty interesting story there. I think it was his dad got his leg cut off in some famous battle, and that's how they got their title or whatever it was, which I'm not even proud of a bunch of ancestors that had titles and stuff. And plus all those lines died before they brought in the German lines in the 1700s. But digressing off of those subjects, this is just the craziness of these people, the incredible deception. Here's the clip.
I have a record, Chuck. It is out there in the public. And I'm the only candidate in the Democratic primary, or actually on either side, who Wall Street financiers and hedge fund managers are actually running ads against.
That's like saying Hitler in 1940 was against the Nazi Party. It's that stupid of a lie. But her constituents want to be lied to. They want to be deceived. But it's again, not stock exchanges that are bad, not the stock market that's bad, not Wall Street that's bad. It's the big mega banks. There's only 5. There were 6 that consolidate control, that have the flash trading, the real-time trading, that rig the interest rates, the currency rates, and the stock market. And they're the private owners of the private run-for-profit Federal Reserve. And they're the people giving capitalism a bad name. They're the ones financing the gun control, financing the open borders, financing the too big to fail. They're the ones that get the bailouts. What, 64%, it turned out, of the bailout money went to foreign banks in 2008, 2009? I mean, I can't believe I have to even sit here and cover these lies. They're so ridiculous. And, you know, here's the good news. Actually, most people aren't buying into it. So that's certainly a ray of sunshine in all of this. Now, let me go ahead and finish up with the Trump news I was mentioning. Poll, Trump takes 10-point lead over Cruz in Wisconsin's home stretch. He is now at 42 over Cruz's 32% in a bombshell new polling data from American Research Group that's a pretty respected group. Most of the other polls show him about 3 to 4 points behind Cruz or coming into a dead heat. And the question is, we're going to play a clip from the lawyer here in just a moment, again, who's joining us Friday. Montgomery Blair Sibley is seeking funds to release the D.C. Madam's records because he knows he's going to get sued and attacked for, probably indicted for violating the gag order. But the question is it the mistress news, the prostitute news coming out that's hurting Mr. Cruz? Look, I'll be honest with you. I'm a libertarian, and so I don't endorse these type of activities, but I also don't sit there on some high horse and you know, said that the big sin here is that all evidence points towards the fact that he is quite the Pepe Le Pew, as I've said. The issue is that he can be blackmailed if he's going to be in the highest office, if he has been visiting with prostitutes, and the fact that he's being anointed of the leader of the priesthood by Glenn Beck, who's now anointing children. I mean, next they're going to have orange-flavored or grape-flavored Kool-Aid in Guyana. I mean, this is getting really crazy, especially when I know behind the scenes what a creep Glenn Beck is and the weird stuff he's into reportedly. And I don't want to sit there and attack him, but he attacks me, so turnabout's fair play. Glenn Beck is a would-be cult leader. And I guess, you know, he wants to make the Messiah this Ted Cruz guy. And I'm just having trouble dealing with it. I mean, if his phone number is in the numbers, and Radar Online and others have gone with that and say, no, it's his registered phone number. And if this stuff's happening, then it's a serious situation. It's a very, very serious situation. And that's probably why a lot of the polls now are shifting and going for Trump as we go into the election today. We're going to be following those numbers and more, and, of course, have that right through to tomorrow with you. So, again, we'll be following Wisconsin today in detail. And on the nightly news, we'll have some expanded coverage tonight, 7 o'clock Central, InfoWarsNews.com. Corporate media finally covers Cruz sex scandal on eve of Wisconsin primary. That's Kurt Nemo's story. Story may destroy Cruz's 5-point lead over Trump in the Badger State. Yeah, because a lot of Christian conservatives just don't like the fact that Trump's got a hot Eastern European wife. I think there's some jealousy there. And I think, I'm not mad at you. I mean, I get it. But I mean, Trump's got his wife in a very classy pose, just showing her back naked in furs. That's a very classy thing if it's your wife. I mean, who doesn't want to have their wife, if she's super beautiful, painted like that, you know, on the bedroom wall? I mean, I don't think, you know, the image of a woman's body is evil. I think denigrating women against their will, hurting women is a bad thing, using women. But also women, you know, manipulating men and stuff, that's bad. But I just don't think it's, you know, a problem with Trump, the fact that he loves life. The lover of life's not the sinner. But the Pharisees of our modern age, the priest class, want to make our normal human behaviors something we're guilty of. It's true we should control them, be aware of it, that the institution of marriage is special and wonderful and should be held up and defended. But they'll all day lecture everybody and make you feel guilty for your own passions instead of feeling good about the good things you stand for. And so many really good people never get involved because they're so humble and they're so upset about their own issues that they won't stand up against things 1,000 times more evil. So again, I'm not going after Cruz if he had girlfriends and mistresses and he and his wife were broke up for a while and he was in Texas for 3 or 4 years while she was in D.C., I'm not endorsing it. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just not judging him. I'm human too. So are you. I mean, really, folks, don't throw rocks in glass houses. So many times people standing up the loudest, bashing gay people and things like that are the ones that get caught in a bathroom with another guy. That's what I'm getting at. The people that all day tell you how moral they are, you better watch them. I grew up in a wealthy area of Dallas, and our house was like one of the smaller ones in the neighborhood, and it was a nice 3-story house. And on the golf course, on the 9th hole, hole 9 yards, and there were all these famous Dallas preachers. The televangelists were based there. They moved to L.A. later. And, I knew their kids. And their kids were trying to sell me drugs at age 12. The preachers would have super gorgeous prostitutes at their house. I mean, I didn't know what they were then. Now I look back, I know what they were. I'd be like 14 and they'd be like, hey, baby, you're looking pretty good, getting out of, their Mercedes and their Bentleys and their everything else. And then I'd see them on TV begging for money. So that's kind of where I got that dislike for the televangelists and how fake they are and kind of seeing behind the scenes of all that because, I witnessed it. I witnessed the, the televangelist Christian lady that you'd see, on TV. And then, we'd be at a lake party. And then next door there'd be a party. And I remember having older family members with me going, look at that preacher. And I remember my mom going, look at her in that leather outfit. David, is that a swinger party over there? My mom to my dad. I'm like, what's that, Dad? He's like, nothing, son, nothing, don't worry. I mean, I grew up around the preachers just running around like satanic rabbits. The ones you've seen on TV, a lot of the famous ones. And I just sat there and I watched it, at the yacht club or whatever, just seeing their behavior. And so that's why Ted Cruz disgusts me and Glenn Beck and the rest of them. Because they're just pervy. Like Glenn Beck on national TV at the time going, I became a Mormon so I could have sex with my wife. He giggled, that weird little perv sweater he wears. It's like, ugh. Perv alert. People got gaydar, man. I got pervar. Pervertar. And let me tell you, that guy is a pervert if I ever saw one. I don't know what he's perving into. I don't know anything about. I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't like Glenn Beck and I've had enough of him. How's that sound? And I'm digressing, and I apologize. I don't normally stoop down to that, but this is what we're covering here. And there should be an investigation if he's connected to this madam that was found murdered. That's where I'm going, and that's what I have to say on that front. So when we return, we are going to continue looking at the move to get rid of cash. We're going to look at the latest on the Second Amendment, the latest on the Panama Papers, and so much more. We got a bunch of big guests joining us as well in the second, third, and fourth hour today. We're going to get John McAfee on probably today. He just contacted us. He has a Business Insider story. A time bomb is hidden beneath the Panama Papers. And then I read the article, and it's exactly what I was saying, that it's not one American, one top globalist. This is totally economic warfare to shut down every other country, every other group's offshore banking that's totally legal in almost all cases. It's all selective enforcement to create the illusion that it's all illegal, and then the FBI in our country will just announce worldwide hegemony to put bags on your head and throw you on a private jet and fly you back here. Kidnapping. I mean, that's what it is. And again, they're running the whole world government out of the United States, and then we get hated for it. But we're going to get McAfee to pop in. Richard Reeves is going to pop in from Brookfield, Wisconsin, obviously, as the election goes on as we speak. And so much more. He'll be popping in. Leo Zagami from Rome coming up for the first 30 minutes of the next hour will also be joining us. So McAfee, Leo Zagami, Richard Reeves, the list just goes on and on. Wayne Madsen on the D.C. Madam and more. I also want to get into the situation with the cash as they move to restrict that, because that is so incredibly important. Also, I want to talk about the fact that not all cultures are equal, okay? Humans are humans. Humans act the same throughout history, but a lot of cultures get into systems of evil, whether it was the Nazis or the communists in Russia or whatever. That becomes the culture, the Chinese communist culture. And you're allowed in your culture to be offended by somebody else's culture. You know, maybe somebody doesn't think Western culture is superior if they're in the East. Maybe they're Tibetan. That's their opinion. So it's all about perspective. But under multiculturalism, we're supposed to honor the cultures, but only in the branding the establishment gives them. Only the traits that the establishment claims those cultures have. China's dog meat festival appalls animal lovers. And they teach at university it's racist if you say that you're grossed out by eating dog in Asian cultures. Well, no, I'm allowed to say I love dogs, and I think that that is a gross thing and a weird aberration of some of those Asian cultures, and I think it's gross. Just like killing tigers for their member because you think it makes you have stamina, which it doesn't. So, you know, I'm not bashing Chinese people, but man, lay off the dog, okay? Come here, Americanize. Don't grab my dog out of the backyard. I mean, that goes on, folks. That goes on. Don't be a predator on my animal. Just like coyotes will eat your dog out of your backyard. I'm not against coyotes. That's just what they do. So that's all coming up because Paul Watson did a video that has some well, not really profanity in it. He talks about some of the cultural practices that are done out there that I can't say on air. I forget the name of it. It's a powerful video, but it made me think of it. It's on his YouTube channel. Not all cultures are equal, and he goes on to break down why he thinks the West is the best. So that's all coming up. Briefly, we're going to sell out of Anthroplex that goes very well with Super Male Vitality today at InfoWarsLife.com. The Secret 12 Mythical Bottlement is back in stock. Hillary for Prison t-shirts back in. And the Vitamin Mineral Fusion will sell out by tomorrow. You get 10% off when you sign up for auto ship. Free shipping above orders of $50. InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com. Stay with us. Yes, you are. And we've got 3 hours now laying out before us. We've already eclipsed the first hour. Coming up in the third hour, we're going to be joined by Wayne Madsen, investigative journalist for InfoWars.com. He's in Radar Online. He's on the Inquirer, a news story about Lion Ted and his number being found in the D.C. Madam's phone records cache. We have the late D.C. Madam's lawyer coming on Friday with Madsen as well. But I thought I'd take you back to part of an interview I did on Fox News when she died back in 2008. And the article written by Paul Watson, Overwhelming Evidence Points to Murder of D.C. Madam. Justice Scalia spent his last hours with members of a secretive society of elite hunters. We're also investigating that mysterious death. So we'll talk about that as well with Wayne Madsen, who called it and said, this looks like an occultic area. I believe they do rituals here at Bohemian Grove. 3 weeks later, it came out in the Washington Post that it was part of a secret society founded by Bohemian Grove. Talk about on target. It's actually frightening. Truth is, Madsen just doesn't have a great nose. He has great sources. He was in the National Security Agency and covered Capitol Hill for decades, and he's amazing. I mean, the guy's been a long-time spook, folks. But he just freelances for America. I'm kind of scared of him a little bit. Let's go ahead. He's a nice little plump, sweet little creature. So that's the funny thing about guys like that is that they look so unassuming. He's a very interesting fellow. I wish I knew all his secrets, or maybe I don't. But let's go to that clip.
No, I'm not planning to commit suicide. I'm planning to go into court on April 7th, and I plan on exposing the government in ways that, I do not think they want me to expose them.
Joining me now from Austin, Texas, the well-known radio host himself, the conspiracy theorist and documentary filmmaker Alex Jones. Alex interviewed Deborah Palfrey in March of this year when she told him what you just heard, that she would never commit suicide. So, Alex, welcome. What do you think? Do you believe this to be as the authorities say it is?
Geraldo, first off, thanks for having me on. She was a very nice lady, very genteel. There's no doubt in my mind that she was murdered. Let me just go through some of the basic evidence. She told me repeatedly on my radio show, and those interviews are posted at Infowars.com in full, that she would never kill herself, that she wasn't planning to kill herself. I pressed her during breaks in front of the board ops. I said, listen, this is dangerous. You've got to say who these people were. You know, do you know? And she said, well, I'm not going to say. I just want this all to end. And I said, you've got to say who it was or you're not safe. She said, listen, I'll never kill myself. If they claim that, I was murdered. So we have a tape of her saying she wouldn't commit suicide. Now, NBC in Florida, where she had a condo, is reporting that one of her friends, who was the manager of the high-rise condos, and he's on tape saying 2 days before she was killed, before she died, she left to her mother's and said, look, I'm being followed. I think there's a contract out on me. I'm not going to kill myself. This is on tape. Then you look at Brandy Britton. She was facing 6 months in jail last year, shot her mouth off, Ms. Palfrey said, the D.C. madam said, and said, I'm going to talk about who my Johns are. This is hypocritical. She was a professor. You know, she had a psychology degree. She was saying, this is hypocritical. I'm going to tell who my Johns were, and then she hangs herself. Number one, Geraldo, you've covered a lot of criminology. You know, women don't normally hang themselves. First, one of her girls kills herself. Now she kills herself.
They take pills.
That's it. There's more there. We're going to repost all those, do some stories on it. But Ted Cruz is tied into all this. And I tell you, they've killed a lot of the women involved in that. And I love how the media degrades these women when the most powerful men and women, by the way, get these women, these high-end prostitutes, the oldest profession, and then they sit there and talk about how bad and evil these women are, and the whole culture just treats them like they're trash. It's total hypocrisy. And just watching him be anointed and sliming around and everything. I mean, look, lying Ted is cheating Ted. The evidence is overwhelming, and he's also blackmailed Ted. And now you know why the globalists like him is because, hey, they got him by the short hairs. They got him by the huevos. Just like George Carlin said. Ladies and gentlemen, we are broadcasting worldwide. John McAfee has a big article out dealing with the bombshell revelations hidden in the Panama Papers, concurring with my analysis that it's really a Rockefeller Soros Foundation op targeting Putin selectively, but not one person in the United States. Also, we're going to obviously have Wayne Madsen on the murder of the D.C. madam, and the phone number now confirmed, reportedly, according to Radar Online and others, to be Ted Cruz's. And we've been at the heart of that investigation since she was on my show 2 weeks before they murdered her. And I've interviewed her friends, her family. They were after her. They said they were going to kill her. She was hiding. She was trying to get documents to people when they beat her up, drug her into the shed at her mother's house, and killed her. And the mainstream media went along with that lie, except for Geraldo Rivera and a few others. And as much as I disagree with Geraldo on a few issues, I think he's a very honorable, smart man who has a lot of courage for the things he's done in the past. That said, I disagree with him on the open borders and things like that. Look, there's so much happening in this world, and it all ties together. And I want to get him on for a full hour in the near future, but he's just on with us for about 20 minutes right now. Leo Zagami, leozagami.com, is a best-selling author worldwide. I'm not going to go over his whole bio, but he has been highly involved in the Vatican, been involved in some of the higher-level secret societies that are based there in Rome. His family obviously involved in some of that. Is how he got into all of it. And so much of what he's talked about has ended up coming true. Like he said, they're going to have a black pope. It's going to be a Jesuit, probably, of this individual that we now currently have. He's talked about a lot of this. He said a couple of years ago that this new pope would end up resigning later and setting the precedent that you just have popes for 5 to 10 years or less. Now he's announcing that, or you may have multiple popes. So they're killing the institution, whether you love it or hate it. Calling for world government, calling for open borders, criticizing Donald Trump when he's got 100 to 200-foot walls. He's called for the Italian military to go into Macedonia and Albania to stop the Islamics pouring in. But he wants every other country to take these folks in. So if you're a radio listener, he's joining us via video Skype. But if you're a TV viewer at Infowars.com/show, you can see in the background some of the amazing footage we shot last year in Rome, right above the Vatican and inside of the Vatican. So HD footage shot by Rob Dew and myself there on screen. We'll also roll HD footage of the bizarre occult compound out in South West Texas, where Scalia died, where there were devil masks on the main walls, little plaques of demons ripping apart and eating children. And Wayne Madsen is an investigative journalist par excellence. He said, I believe this is Bohemian Grove connected and that this is Dick Cheney connected. And I said, how do you know? And he just goes, oh, I just have a gut feeling. Well, no, he has sources. And then it broke in the Washington Post that indeed it was occult stuff going on there. And he was part of a ancient Vatican association of the Brotherhood of Hunting. But that's a cover because they said it had been destroyed by Hitler. And so it was, quote, brought back by Bohemian Grove in 1960. They take old orders and launch them again. Now, if you're a new listener, this isn't Alex Jones saying this. This is the Washington Post. Justice Scalia spent his last hours with members of a secretive society of elite hunters. This is weeks after our crew was down there and said it was like Bohemian Grove meets The Shining. So all this occultism ties in. So I want to just boil down this in pieces with Leo Zagami with us right now. We'll also talk about his latest book as well that's also in English. But Leo, I mean, the occultism, the secret societies, they recruit you saying it's a good society. Then later you find out there's a society within a society within a society. Geopolitically, what do you make of our election, Donald Trump, other big stories you're working on, and how this ties into Scalia?
Well, Scalia was in a club, in an order actually, which is called the Order of Saint Hubertus. This order, it's an order dedicated to hunting. It's a knighthood order that goes back hundreds of years in the Austro-Hungaric Empire. It's basically...
to Bavarian Germany.
Sorry?
To Germany, yes.
Yes, but at the same time, like all knighthood orders, they are linked to the Vatican because there is no knighthood order that can be granted without the blessing of a church if you are an aristocrat. As this order is particularly connected to the European aristocracy, of course, is also connected to the Vatican. So Judge Scalia found himself in environment which is typically conservative, like the environment we know in Bohemian Grove. Like you said, it has connections to Bohemian Grove because some of these orders risk to be extinguished when the Nazis arrived and they first of all closed down Freemasonry and then persecuted certain knighthoods which they feared could be used against them. And one of them, of course, was this specific one. So they might have on the outside an honorable cause, which is to defend, you know, the honorability of a certain kind of hunting done in a traditional way and so on. But like you said earlier, the honorable, maybe outspoken endeavor of this order is not really why they're meeting. They're meeting to just make business, lobbying, and manipulating this new world order, crafting it in a very reserved fashion in these clubs, in these orders, wherever they are in the world. The Panama Papers that we are seeing now, of course, they are. It's a conspiracy specifically dedicated to those people who are not in line with the democratic agenda of the US. So with the Soros, with Obama, and the whole show.
Sure, exactly. And they admit Bohemian Grove recreated the society, so it wasn't the original conservative society. We don't even know if it was authorized by the Vatican. He goes to it, even though it's run by a bunch of former black op commanders and Democrats that are in Obama's hip pocket and that Obama hangs out with. Sounds to me like he walked into a trap. We'd be insane to not investigate it.
The thing is, you see, that this order in the specific actually is linked to the black nobility of Europe. This aristocracy, which is very close to the Vatican, is super powerful.
So you're saying he was in a super high-powered group?
It was a very super high-powered group, absolutely. I mean, they are the ones who are untouched. I mean, if you go and see, for example, who is being touched by this Panama Papers now scandal, the latest thing that has happened in the media, you will not see any members of the Bilderberg or prominent members of the Trilateral. You will simply see those people which at the moment maybe can be, let's say, an enemy to this plan, which wants to install Hillary Clinton president of the White House. And everybody here in Europe is fearing this. That's why they have also now exposed in the Panama Papers that a lot of money is going to the Le Pen family, for example, because they want to destroy the credibility of Le Pen in France. And at the same time, Le Pen is connected to Matteo Salvini here in Italy, which is now with the Northern League taking a very strong conservative stand against this immigration. And also, of course, we have in the Panama assets Vladimir Putin, which is really the only one who has been really fighting ISIS on the ground, not with theories, but with actual a war on the ground, which cost them also a lot of soldiers. Of course, at one point he pulled out of the whole thing because he has probably reached some kind of deal at the geopolitical level. Which
sure. Without getting into too much of the esoterica, looking at the election, looking at what's happening, looking at Ted Cruz, and they have a lot of great sources, Leo Zagami. This is all interconnected. What does it signify that the popes openly come out for world government, openly got involved in our internal elections? The Chinese communists have joined in. Everybody else has joined in. We see this total demonization of Trump. I mean, from your intel, is he good? Is he bad? Do they not know who he is? So they don't want him getting in a power position because he's not compromised? I mean, to me, it looks like they're legitimately really fearful of Donald Trump. I could see them demonizing him in case he's their operative to put him in power and fool the people. But they look legitimately upset right now.
No, they are upset. You see, I have had contact with people who are actually very close to Donald Trump here in Europe. And I see how they are operating. There are actually a lot of old friends of mine involved in this. And of course, even here in Italy, they are fearing the arrival of Donald Trump, because that automatically will mean a complete change, a political change in Italy, in France, in Germany, everywhere in Europe. So this reflection of something that could really change things scares the Democrats. The conservatives now, unfortunately, are getting corrupted, and we will see how much this corruption gets in the coming, of course, GOP.
Well, that's what I was about to say. They seem to be losing control with the corruptions coming out everywhere of every institution. We're finding secret societies that are Vatican connected under every rock. You know that I've never been a Catholic basher. I'm not saying it's a Catholic conspiracy, but clearly they've used the Catholic system and the Catholic institutions to bring in this Illuminati program that I know the church for many hundreds of years reportedly fought. Some would say, though, that's really a dialectic. It's controlling it. But then separately, you've got all this other corruption coming out about the royal families and pedophilia and other institutions, and that the interest rates are rigged, and that there is a world government, and that there are cancer viruses being added to the vaccines. I mean, almost everything I talk about and that you talk about that was hidden is now just coming out in the open. Have they lost full control? Why are they just admitting so much like, okay, we really are going to appoint whoever the candidates are going to be for the first time ever? It seems to be an uncloaking.
They are scared of Donald because Donald is not part of a club, of an order, doesn't care about a knighthood, doesn't care about any degree in Freemasonry that can be bestowed upon him as an honorary degree because he's been a good fellow in the system. Donald really cares about the American people. I think that he's a businessman. He's a practical man. He might not be a great statesman, but I'm sure he might surround himself with great statesmen in the future. The problem is now that there might be an act of sabotage against him from the military-industrial complex that is moved within the Republican Party nomination. This is the real problem of now, and it will reflect in the whole politics of, this new world order.
What happens to the media complex globally as the newspapers across the world collapse, as establishment media collapses, as new independent media that knows what it's talking about explodes? There seems to be some point where the establishment has to do something desperate to maintain their control. We see the attempts at censorship. We see the Muslim invasion. How does all that tie into this?
Well, they continue to pour in immigrants into Europe. The Pope continues to say that we have to accept them. He goes through all kinds of propaganda stunts. He even washed the feet of Muslims on the day he was supposed to do the act of washing the feet of some faithful. I really don't understand how a Pope can wash the feet of another faith, of somebody from another faith in an act which is really a right.
That's one world religion stuff.
Yeah, it is really, in the end, like we said in the past, Alex, going towards the one-world religion scenario. And these immigrants now, of course, are a lot of business also for the church and for all these hypocrites, these politicians that I'm sure if Panama is the place where a lot of conservative politicians have put their money, there is other places around the world where the Democrats, the left-wingers put their own...
Well, it's come out the French socialists literally pay almost no taxes and have Swiss bank accounts.
People like, for example, Massimo D'Alema, who used to be a communist, he has big palaces in Monte Carlo. He has money all over the world. And the same is for many other political leaders of the so-called left, including, of course, people close to the Clintons. So now we are in a situation in which we have to really understand that the people who are ruling this planet are corrupt. Fundamentally, they are corrupt. There's very few people who are not.
Well, you've made a lot of predictions. You wrote the book, The Last Pope, and then before that you predicted there'd be a Jesuit Pope for the first time ever. Then you predicted that they would start again, as I said earlier, only serving 5 years like a tour or a term. He's now announcing everything you said he would do, because you've obviously got high-level sources in the Vatican. So tell us, Mrs. Zagami, tell us the next shoe to drop.
Well, last week, for example, the famous attic of Bertone, which we talked about for the first time on our special, you remember, here on InfoWars, that we made in Rome, was exposed even by the Pope, who started his own investigation against Cardinal Bertone. Because the money to build this famous attic, which we talked about, you remember, Alex, in the documentary, this lavish place where Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone was living, was made with the money stolen from the church for the little children. So this is the hypocrisy of the powerful people that are in the Vatican. And Tarcisio Bertone, instead of condemning this situation, he came out and said, well, my attic is smaller than the ones of other 30 cardinals living in Rome. So there is another 30 cardinals living in Rome who have an attic bigger than the one that Tarcisio Bertone has, which is several hundred square meters. So why do we have to continue with this pathetic nonsense? I think that they are very scared because Donald Trump is a man of practical means, a man that sees also injustice when he sees it, and that he might really break this whole balance that they are achieving through selling to the people an illusion that the Pope is a holy man, that the Prime Minister or the President are very great people, but in reality they're all corrupt.
Sure, I want to shift gears back to what happened to the Justice Scalia, Antonin Scalia. Do you have intel on whether he was murdered or not? And if so, why? I mean, so many key cases he was going to be hearing. Such an important time for this to happen. The whole thing stinks to high heaven. The scripting of how they announced he died, the bizarreness of where he died, not having the autopsy, just from the beginning, it was like almost meant to make it suspicious.
Well, you see, the problem here is that the means that they might have used to kill him are now only known to intelligence services. Basically, they can give you, they can insert in your systems particles and things that react in a way that is even worse than poison and create, of course, a possible stroke or some kind of other illness within the matter of days. So we might never really have a confirmation because it's literally impossible if they have not permitted even this body to be resumed or controlled in any way that we will ever have an answer for what you are asking me. But from what they're saying here in Europe, it seems that this secret society is linked to directly to the Club Bilderberg and to the Jesuits, not only to the Bohemian Grove. because it's linked to some elements in the European aristocracy who are completely behind. Remember where one of the last meetings of the Club Bilderberg was done? It was done in Austria, no?
Say that again, sir?
One of the last meetings of the Club Bilderberg
Yes, it was in
done
Austria.
in Austria.
Yes.
And this order is linked.
Absolutely. Now expanding on this, how are things going for the globalists? How are things going for this power bloc? Because China, we're almost out of time, is threatening military action. There's a lot of fights going on with Russia. How are things going between the different power blocs? Other key points you'd like to make in closing, Leo?
Well, in this power struggle, still we have to see the definite moves that will be done by China in the coming weeks. Because I think that if China gets involved by Soros into these Panama Papers, he might risk some kind of reaction from China. And China has some very powerful assets they can move against Soros. And of course, the Bank of China also works very closely with the Rothschild Bank. So it might seem like at the moment these Panama Papers are only hitting on one direction, but the reflections of this scandal might actually hit the actual people who have motivated the CIA agents who have given that material, because that's how it is.
Sure. I mean, the German paper's the most controlled. That's come out in the news. They put it out. They have it for a year to vet, to target who they want to go after. And it's clearly to just go after anybody that they don't control. Leo Zagami, leozagami.com. His book, The Last Pope, available in English across the world.
And also Confessions Volume 1 and Volume 2, where I also mention you, Alex, and there is a surprise for you on Volume 2.
Surprise for me in Volume 2. I can't wait. All right, we're going to have you on soon, buddy. Thanks a lot for joining us. I want to do an interview with you on that sometime. Stay with us. We got McAfee joining us. Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central, we're here live. John McAfee, the inventor of one of the first and most successful antivirus programs, also an adventurer in his own right, investigative journalist, running for president 2016 for the Libertarian ticket. He came out with an excellent article on Business Insider. John McAfee, a time bomb is hidden beneath the Panama Papers, and we concur with his analysis. Here's our article, Soros and Ford Foundation behind the Panama Papers. Oh my gosh, $2 billion in Russian-connected money. Oh my gosh, in offshore accounts. Oh my gosh, is it quadrillions in fake derivatives? Or Bank of America taking houses that they never had a deed to that were paid for? Oh no, it's loan guarantees. It's Russia doing business. I'm not saying Russia doesn't have a bunch of mafia activities going on. That's how governments operate. I'm not defending any of it. It's just literally a joke to see this type of crud in our media, where our media that tells us it's okay to steal popular elections from Donald Trump tells us how evil Vladimir Putin is. I mean, give me a break. We're going to go to John McAfee, McAfee2016.com here in just a moment. First off, though, ladies and gentlemen, it's not a glitch. It's something I noticed, and I said we ought to advertise it because it works this way. We have one of the most high-tech, modern, safest, certified, best shopping carts out there. We already had a great one, but we've upgraded InfoWarsStore.com to where it has basic things like auto ship, where you something like a staple like Anthroplex, a staple like Vitamin Mineral Fusion, InfoWarsLife.com that you want to get every month and don't want to forget to get. You get 10% off when you sign up for auto ship. You can get every 15 days, every 30 days, every 60 days, every 90 days. You can cancel anytime. And it is 10% off your order when you do that. Well, we always hold back a surplus for people that have signed up for auto ship. And I made the point that if people guaranteed we're going to order something, we could factor that in and hold back more so that we never sold out of some of the key items, because we sell out of a lot of it because it's hard to get super high quality organics always. And so sometimes we just don't have it, so we can't produce it at some of the top labs in the country that InfoWars Life uses. So it's a little loophole there that we've decided to keep there. I mean, we can keep it there or we can remove it. I'm gonna test it out. I mean, if you sign up now, you'll be grandfathered in and be able to do it. I don't know if we're gonna keep it there forever, but you can go get items that are sold out because we held back enough to always be able to supply everybody who had already ordered, and we kept a surplus. Now, the problem is if everybody figures that out when things like DNA Force are sold out for 3 months, then we may get more orders in there than we actually have it, so it's got to be watched. That's why I say we may not keep it forever. Or it may get so popular, because it's starting to get popular, that we can't do it for new people. We're just gauging it, beta testing it right now. By the way, a small shipment of DNA Force did come in yesterday. It's going to be back up on the cart today. It's our flagship product. It's a nutraceutical of the highest quality, half the price of leading competitors that aren't even as good. Most people go to medical doctors. The Bio PQQ is of the highest quality. The CoQ10, all of it is just over-the-top nutraceutical level. We just signed a deal with a huge nutraceutical company. Not nutraceutical, it's actually a large company that actually produces pharmaceuticals, but to start putting out our products as well. Then we can even say that it was manufactured at one of the biggest labs in the country. But that's the level of products we're bringing you. DNA Force is back in. It says get on the waiting list, but we're about to change that and let folks know that it is back in stock as of the next hour or so. So Anthroplex will sell out. We also have Super Male Vitality, Super Female Vitality. That is still in stock, but selling out quickly. And the newest product, the Vitamin Mineral Fusion, with all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the amino acids, totally absorbable because you're drinking it. So much better than pills. The best tasting out there, the healthiest. I mean, this is a game changer. We won't have any in for at least a month. So tell us what you think. Give us your reviews. And we really, really appreciate all of your support out there. InfoWarsLife.com is the nutraceuticals. InfoWarsStore.com is the big umbrella site that covers it all. Now, going back to John McAfee, who doesn't really need any introduction here today. McAfee, 2016.com. Who is McAfee.com? FutureTenseCentral.com. And, of course, he was a programmer, engineer, worked at NASA, then worked at a bunch of other areas in the government and things. A very interesting fellow. In 1987, McAfee founded McAfee Associates, again, the most famous antivirus company in the world, sold it, the multi-billion-dollar company, and then, of course, escaped police and said that they were funding jihadists coming into the U.S. with fake passports and rioting. I rolled my eyes, and a year later it turned out to be true. I mean, I didn't think he was lying, but it just sounded like a James Bond movie. And he joins us now, good friend of mine, getting to know him over the years, really interesting, trailblazing, maverick-type individual. If there was a real Captain Morgan, they ought to put him on the side of the rum bottle, folks, I'm telling you. So the real Captain Morgan, John McAfee, joins us with what he says is a time bomb hidden beneath the Panama Papers. Mr. McAfee, good to have you back with us.
Well, thank you, Alex. It's always good to be on your show.
I concur with your analysis, but you've gone over the much of the data dump. What is hiding there?
Well, I think the biggest thing that's hiding there, Alex, is that this is a smear campaign orchestrated by the U.S. government. There's an organization called the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists that put out this report. But what they did, I mean, there are 14,000 people who are listed in this report. None of them are Americans. There's no American politician. There's no American sports figure. There's no American actor. There's nothing. And yet we know for a fact that America probably uses these services, or American citizens, more than anybody else. And so I did some checking, Alex. I found out that the ICIJ is actually it's part of the USA Center for Public Integrity. It's funded by Soros, Ford Foundation, Carnegie, Rockefeller, W.K. Kellogg.
The usual suspects.
The usual suspects, and it reports to the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, OCCRP, and that's financed by the U.S. government through USAID. So this whole thing is a setup. It's basically to smear. It does two things, Alex. It smears our enemies, or the government's enemies, and number two, it alerts those Americans who are actually in that database that we know who you are. It sets up, the table for enormous potential blackmail by the U.S. government. This thing is so absurd that it's ridiculous. There's already been one casualty. The Prime Minister of Iceland resigned this morning, and I think that there's going to be more casualties. But either one of two things is happening. They will come out later with a list of U.S. citizens, and they will be selective, as you and I know. Or all these people will be blackmailed by one of our Secret Services agencies.
Well, I concur with that. You know, on Sunday I came out when I first looked at it and I said this is a blackmail operation. It's been in the news that Germany has the most infiltrated media by the CIA and by the private foundation networks. They sat on it for a year with 100 newspapers to vet who they would go after, showing they were very, very selective to clean it, just like WikiLeaks to a certain extent. And that clearly it's a way to try to bring in more international law, more regulations. It is completely selective, and just what an amazing scandal that, sure enough, you've got the story. Business Insider, Kurt Nimmo did the same research, leads right back to the Ford and Rockefeller foundations. They're the ones trying to get rid of the borders. They're the ones coming after the guns. They're the ones financing the war on police. They're the ones financing globalism. They literally are financing the fall of every nation state, the war against Russia and Ukraine, the overthrow of non-radical Muslim countries. They are the Legion of Doom. I mean, Lex Luthor, Alexander Luthor of Fantasyland, has nothing on these true supervillains. I mean, it's so ridiculous.
Well, absolutely. Like the Süddeutsche Zeitung, the South German newspaper in Munich, sat on this story for over a year. And we do, in fact, know that the German media has been, in fact, highly infiltrated by the CIA. And I'm sure that every single reporter on the International Commission, what a great title, by the way, International Commission of Investigative Journalists. I can guarantee you every single one of those are CIA. And this entire thing stinks. It really does. And it bodes ill for American citizens. I mean, and maybe you have an offshore account for totally legitimate purposes. We don't know that the Prime Minister of Iceland, for example, did not have an account for legitimate purposes.
Yeah, most of this is totally legal, and the ultra robber baron rich for 60 years act like it's evil if anybody else puts money offshore because you can't trust your government or whatever, or because it's after-tax money, and they're not talking about taking after-tax money out of our accounts. It's a normal thing. The elites wrote the book on it, but they don't want the general public or the new wealthy, the nouveau riche, to have access to it.
Right. Well, I had one myself. It was after-tax income, and I put it offshore because I didn't trust the American banking system. And you know, I had full control of it, and it was independent of whatever happened here in America, which gave me a sense of security. So there's nothing illegal about any of these things. Now, sure, many of them are used for illegal purposes, no question. But by and large, there's nothing wrong with this. And yet, when it does come out, because they've already, like I said, the Prime Minister of Iceland has resigned, and there's smear campaigns throughout the world, people are going to be terrified if the CIA says, "Look, you know, we know that you're in this database. Here's the data, but we want a favor. We want you to not."
Exactly. It's about blackmail. It's about control, and worse than that, it is about letting the public think our governments are going after corruption, going after an international football, soccer organization over little petty stuff about who gets what deal or who gets what sponsorship, going after stuff like that while the big multinational banks run the aircraft, run the drugs, run the weapons. Fast and Furious is still going on through Mexico, out of the Marine Corps base in Arizona, to Al-Qaeda, to ISIS, things that are thousands of times worse. And they sit there and tell us how they're stopping all this corruption. But it gets worse. It's like saying if you have blinds on your windows, you must be doing something wrong, or a front door, because you can have a private bank account or cash. And just because criminals might use that sometimes doesn't mean you can't have privacy and can't have access to it. And I know you harp on this, rightfully so, that if you don't have privacy, you don't have freedom. It's that simple.
Absolutely, absolutely. And by the way, you mentioned the football league and thing. I do not know what the hard-on is that America has for FIFA, but a number of sports figures from FIFA were outed during this Panama Papers smear. And I can guarantee
the Western globalists want it for global propaganda purposes, and they're muscling it because it's actually controlled by an international board. The Russians have a seat at the table. The Russians are in there influence peddling as well, and the Anglo-American West is muscling in and taking it over, period. It's setting the FBI up as this global police force to go put bags over hundreds of the executives' heads in foreign countries and throw them on private jets to fly them back here to face prison.
Absolutely. And privacy, again, you mentioned you can't have freedom without privacy. That is absolutely crucial, and people do not understand that. Because without privacy, the government knows your every move, where you are, who you're talking to, and what you're talking about. And cleaning the streets, as they might call it, would be such a simple thing if they knew everything about everybody. But we have to have privacy. It's just a fundamental right. It's a necessity. I mean, even between husband and wives, where you have almost completely open communication, there might be some things private. I mean, you might be having an affair. You might not choose to tell your wife that. This is your right. It doesn't say, I'm not saying it's morally right or wrong, but it's a way to keep a family together, perhaps. So you simply can't remove our privacies. And I've been debating with the FBI up until last week when they finally dropped their lawsuit against Apple about giving a master key to the FBI so that they can spy on everybody who has.
And by the way, that just makes it easier. As you said here months ago, as I said, I'm not even an expert top hacker like you. I mean, you're well respected, breaking into the Belizean government system with, Trojan horses and the rest of it. But I've talked to people, I have top hackers on, they go, you plug a computer cord that's a computer interface into it, you don't go through the front code, and literally, depending on which generation it is, you can get in a matter of minutes or a matter of hours if it's the latest updates. Most of the apps with big companies have had the government has done deals to build back doors in them. There are so many ways to get in. It's also known they can energize remotely some of these chips, that the chips themselves in deals with China and others have basically remote boot programs that can be sent in wirelessly. I mean, these are Swiss cheese operations. Why do you think they finally had to admit, okay, we can break into it?
Well, because I found out that the FBI had a contract with an Israeli company called Celebrite that sells small devices you can buy for a few $1,000s that you can plug any Apple iPhone into and get all of the data off of it. I don't care whose it is. You don't need any codes. It breaks all the security, breaks the encryption. I found that contract, and I outed them. I said, okay, so obviously you had this contract. You knew all along, and they had purchased these devices. They have thousands of them, Alex. They had already purchased these things. So they knew that they could break into the iPhone. They just wanted to use the fact that this iPhone was used in a terrorist act, which we're all supposed to be terrified of. So
they just wanted to sell the idea to the dumbed-down public that, hey, we can't even break in your phone. We need the keys to everything to keep you safe. Just to sell the idea that we should all wear see-through clothes.
Right. In fact, the FBI mouthpiece I spoke with, James Gordon, when we were debating on CNN, he said at one point, and I cannot believe it, he said, well, you have to give up some privacy in order to get security. My teeth almost fell out. I mean, I could not believe that on a national program, he would say that.
Sure.
I mean,
what's the next big shoe to drop with all these Panama paper hoax and the iPhone hoax? What's the next shoe to drop, Mr. McAfee?
I think they're going to do another law firm. I mean, keep in mind that the Cassock Fonseca firm was the fourth largest, not the largest. There are two firms that are more than twice the size of this one. I guarantee you they're going to be popping into those things soon. So, if anybody out there has accounts there, you might want to, remove yourselves even further from them, because the U.S. government is going to own your ass if you don't. Can I say that on your
No, it's okay, my friend. I mean, look, if this isn't the time to use French, I don't know what time is. How do you think the power structure is doing? I know it's a bunch of different factions, but I want to ask you as we go to break and after the break, what would you call this time in history, my friend?
I would call it utter political chaos, Alex. I would. I mean, we've got the Republican Party seriously in chaos. We've got those in power trying to take the election away from Trump, and the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. God knows what's happening there, but it's not pretty in either case. You've got a case of the measles or a bladder infection to choose from.
Or brain cancer. Yeah, with the Democrats, they're robbing Sanders, and now he's trying to rob her. I mean, it's like just mugging each other. Everything's debasing down to gangs. I mean, we're really seeing the curtain pull back, and it is not pretty, folks. This is an amazing time to be alive, though. A lot of opportunity for freedom in this time of change. John McAfee's our guest. Stay with us. John McAfee is running for president. JohnMcAfee2016.com. He's with us till 5 minutes in the next hour. Then Wayne Madsen, investigative journalist, hot on the heels of Ted Cruz and the dead D.C. Madams, phone records that his phone number was found in. So he'll be joining us, and then Richard Reeves, they're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, covering all the craziness. There is so much footage our guys have gotten. Joe Biggs has gotten on the East Coast. Our crew's gotten in Wisconsin of the bedlam. And it's making news all over the world. I haven't even gotten to a lot of the stuff on Infowars.com. So you definitely want to visit that website frequently. There is so much to cover, so much to go over, so much unfolding. But what I wanted to bring up with Mr. McAfee while he's here with us, and in the next segment, talk a little bit about why he's running for president. This is out of Market Watch. Now, you knew this 20 years ago. I knew this 20 years ago. They're moving towards, our audience knew this a long time ago, towards this smart grid technology that's really just back doors to track and trace everything we do in taxes. The police could be controlling your self-driving car. Well, all the new cars are coming out with self-driving technology already in them. They're advertising it as safe technology where the car stops itself or goes out of the way, but this is total control. It's a global program. It's being wired in. They've got all these chips in the computers now that can be wirelessly activated. They have little transponders in them. I mean, this is like something out of a science fiction movie where aliens take over and, you know, program the world to turn against the people. I'm not saying that's what it is, but it's just so wild that there's this giant global technocratic program putting Trojans in everything. And now they're getting to the point with Samsung last year going, in the terms of service for a new TV, oh, yeah, we are watching and listening to you and selling it to third parties. And, yes, we are going to take control of your car. And, yes, we are doing this. And, yes, we are putting cancer viruses in your vaccines. I mean, it's getting so open. What do you think's going on, John?
Well, I mean, it's ultimate control. I mean, the government that knows everything about the populace becomes a dictatorship. I mean, this is the philosopher's stone of people who want to be dictators. If you know everything about the citizenry, then you can control the citizenry, and this is what they want.
And now they're so arrogant. Now they're so arrogant. They're saying they'll just take the delegates away from Trump even if he wins. I mean, that is crazy.
Well, you know, worse things have happened. Not worse, but certainly stranger things have happened in this country. And our government is turned inside out. You know,
well, that's why I'm glad you're running for president. I mean, and so you're...
Well, you know, I'm in the Libertarian Party, and you know what we believe. We believe that personal freedom and liberty is the prime focus of life.
And the greatest secure of freedom. And the greatest secure of security. I mean, freedom brings security. Totalitarianism, as Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin said, does not protect you.
Absolutely. We have what we have is a government which has taken away our freedom. Because what is freedom? Freedom and liberty is the fact that we own our own bodies and our own minds. So I can put into my mind whatever I want. If I choose to believe in evolution, I can do that. Although the government at times has tried to restrict even what we're allowed to teach our children. If I choose to smoke cigarettes or drink alcohol, that's my business. It's not yours. It's certainly not the government's. Our government has become our boss, our mother, and our father instead of our servant, which was its original intent. I don't need a mother and father. I'm 7 years old now.
And
so
we've reached that point. No one, even the dumbest person, cannot deny we have reached a moment where we are collapsing into flaming, over-the-top, classical tyranny. I mean, who can deny that?
Well, no, we're reaching a totalitarian government. There is no question about it. And they're using the technology of the modern age and all the cyber sciences to gain the knowledge of the citizenry so it can be controlled. I don't want to be controlled.
Stay there, 70 seconds, 5 more minutes. I want to ask you, looking into the Philosopher's Stone, what Google's over-the-horizon future predictive systems mean to world economies? John McAfee's our guest. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com. I'm talking to Roger Stone during the break. She's coming on tomorrow with huge bombshells, but, man, they are attacking him everywhere. MSNBC edits out Roger Stone interview. You know, I've hit the point of overwhelmed with all the data we've got. I mean, it is just crazy. I wish I could tell you the inside baseball on the Trump stuff. It is crazy what's going on. I can tell you, Trump knows about the New World Order. He knows about globalism. He's more of a populist. I wish he was more anti-police state like somebody like McAfee. Trump doesn't seem to get, and I'm told by folks that know him really well, that he's not very computer savvy. That's kind of a blind spot. Maybe if Trump does get in, maybe he can have McAfee as his national security advisor on cybersecurity or something, because We need some libertarians and people that know what they're doing, you know, advising Trump. He's got a lot of great points, but also some blind spots, John.
Well, it's the blind spots that really concern me, Alex. You know, as you said, the overburdening police state, that has to be cut back. It really does. I think where the libertarians differ from Trump is in the idea that government is way too big, overbearing, and it is too intrusive in our lives. You know, in my own campaign, I am focusing on reducing government dramatically. I mean, look at the FDA. I mean, the FDA tells dying people that they cannot have access to certain drugs because it may harm them. And so we're basically saying, you're terminally ill, but we're not going to give you this. We don't want to hurt you. The insanity of that, you know, makes me sick.
It's incredible.
And again, I think Trump's lack of understanding of cyber science and cybersecurity is also very alarming. And we have been attacked by Iran, by North Korea, by many of our enemies, and we just barely squeaked by through luck when the Iranians hacked into the New York power dam in 2013. They were trying to open the sluice gates.
Absolutely, and the Iranians better watch it with something like that, because, I mean, we don't just have our crazy government, we have all these other crazy government. You heard the question I asked earlier, and I kind of digressed into Trump, I apologize. Reading what Google said, what they released last year, that when they were first founded 16 years ago, was to create an AI system to predict the future, so that when they predict the future, they can then add stimuli to control the future. They say they've successfully done that. Other people, Apple have done that. Microsoft reportedly has done it. That's why Amazon says they come with a 99% accuracy rating with their Prime members that order stuff all the time from them, have prepackaged what you're going to order before you order it. That is predicting the future. Doesn't that begin to end free will? And then we have an elite that's so corrupt with that type of power, Mr. McAfee?
Absolutely. And it's not just Google and Apple and Amazon. It's also Facebook and Twitter that are manipulating our emotions. I mean, look at all the fake news from these, quote, satire news sites that don't approach satire whatsoever. It's absolute fabricated nonsense. And people on Facebook are believing it.
It's meant to cause confusion. Like they'll have articles from The Onion about FEMA camps that mirror C-SPAN, and then there's real announcements about FEMA camps on C-SPAN, and people think it's The Onion.
Yes, absolutely. It's insane. So it's a dangerous cliff that we are teetering on, all of us here in this society. And seriously, Alex, if the president of this country does not understand the nuances of cyber science, then we're lost. I'm sorry, we are. And I'd like to take this opportunity to say that the Libertarian Party offers a third choice. It really does. And it's a unique choice. And it's a choice where we want to form a government that gets the hell out of your way. End of story.
Exactly. I mean, it's like coming home and your 14-year-old kids are bossing you around and, you know, locking you up in your room. I mean, it's just totally inverted. It can't go on forever. And I see all this flailing as signs of desperation from the kleptocrats. What do you say, John McAfee, in closing?
Well, in closing, I'd like to say go to McAfee2016.com and donate $1, donate 50 cents, whatever you can afford, because we're up against two very powerful machines, and these machines have not worked for
Sure, and I'll say this. I know you're running, and you're running to win, and I respect that, but you're winning by being involved, by being in the debates coming up, by injecting real ideas, standing up for civil liberties and cybersecurity that's sensible. Thank you, John. You're doing a great job. Have a great week. Wayne Madsen is an award-winning investigative journalist, formerly ran a lot of the internal security operations at the National Security Agency, and he's got amazing sources. Remember, 2 weeks before it was in the Washington Post, he said, on site, he said, "This place smells like Bohemian Grove. I sense Dick Cheney." It's almost like Darth Vader. "I feel a presence I haven't felt." And then turns out it's all true. Comes out in the Washington Post. Weird secret society refounded by Bohemian Grove. I don't know how he predicted that. I think he had a source, but he won't tell us. We're going to go to him in a minute. But, you know, I'm joking around. We're talking about a dead Supreme Court justice and something so suspicious. It's almost like it was designed to make us suspicious. He had a pillow over his face. No autopsy. We're going to get to all that. And Deborah Jean Palfrey, the D.C. madam, who he was friends with, he knows the lawyer. The lawyer's coming on Friday with Wayne Madsen. It's just crazy. Now Ted Cruz phone number found reportedly in there, according to Radar Online. As we've got other big articles coming out reportedly in other papers in the next few days. We also have the Inquirer with another article with their source being Wayne Madsen, one of their sources, commenting on the D.C. madam and that number reportedly being in there. There's a gag order on the names in her list attached to the phone numbers. So this is big stuff. And let me tell you, I can sense when something's dangerous. I get a little tingle, a little sick feeling in my gut, like I told Palfrey a couple weeks before she got killed. I get that same feeling on this for everybody involved. This is dangerous because it's not just Ted Cruz, but you got dead hookers, Cruz, now that we got to deal with here, and dead madams. I don't mean that name in the pejorative, by the way. That's just what the media calls them. The real slime balls are the people that go around using these women and then end up killing them. But I tell you, it is absolutely disgusting. We're going to go to him here in just a moment. I want to play a couple clips, too, of the lawyer coming out, Palfrey's lawyer. Also have a clip from back in 2008 where I was on Geraldo breaking down the facts. We're going to play that. Please don't forget that don't wait for orders from headquarters. Go to the sound of the guns. He's an investigative journalist that does freelance work for InfoWars. And there he is all over the news in the middle of the Ted Cruz scandal. And I'm like watching him from afar. And I go, wait a minute, he works with us. I need to get him on. Same thing. I'm so busy. I need to send him to the DNC, RNC. Wayne, I know you say you want to do it. We're sending you there. I'm going as well, but I want you at the DNC, not just the RNC, because I can only go to one. I'm going to the to the RNC. So a lot's coming up with our reporters. And just don't forget, this is the operation you've helped build. And we're almost exclusively funded by our direct sales. The network we're on pays their bills with the radio ads you hear. Okay? When you buy the products at InfoWarsStore.com, whether it's a Hillary for President t-shirt or a shortwave radio or non-GMO heirloom seeds at really good prices, you're funding the tip of the spear in the fight for human liberty. Go to InfoWarsLife.com. Get the new vitamin mineral fusion. It's going to sell out by tomorrow. Amazing with all the amino acids and everything. This is the ultimate, from our research, multivitamin. So important for your children. So important for yourself. It tastes so good. Naturally flavored by the vitamins and minerals that are in it. It's incredible. So concentrated. It says a 30-day supply. It's like a 60-day supply, folks. I use half of what it says put in the cup. It's so good. You can quit soft drinks with this. Get your kids off of them. It's amazing. Sign up for auto ship. Get 10% off. Orders above $50 or more. Free shipping. InfoWarsStore.com. InfoWarsLife.com. Or call toll-free 888-253-3139. Now I'm going to stop right there. That's how we fund this operation. That's how we have the reporters, the investigative journalists. That's how we do this. We don't have the big corporate sponsorship. We don't get the banker bailout money like NBC and MSNBC and all the rest of them. We don't get the product placement money from D.C. like Fox News and News Corp. Hollywood gets billions a year in what they call behavior placement. Before that was ever declassified, I called it propaganda placement, not just product placement. We don't get any of that money. Zero. I remember many years ago that I'm going to Wayne Madsen, major news corporations and then major movie corporations wanted me to consult. I'd say, sure, I'll be a consultant on your movie. And then I'd just get a check. They'd call me and ask like 5 questions, and that'd be it. And then later, I'd get a phone call going, you shouldn't be criticizing things. You know, you get a lot of friends. Don't you want to be a consultant? And I'm like, oh, I figure out what this is. Excuse me, I didn't understand. No, I won't be a consultant for your movie coming out. And I've been a consultant for some big Hollywood movies. And I can't say why, you know, because you sign a non-disclosure deal on it, but people want to know about high-tech police stuff, or they want to know about, you know, your view on this, your view on that. So there was some real consulting there, but really, it's just the system saying, we'll take care of you. Just, hey, you want some voiceover work? Why don't you stop being so radical? Facebook would let us reach 3 million people with every video. As soon as I criticize Zuckerberg, no more. They put an algorithm in to block it. This is the real world we face, so don't take the broadcast for granted. I know you don't. Now, I'm going to go to Wayne Madsen right now, and then we're going to play some clips of the lawyer for Palfrey and, of course, myself on Fox News breaking this down at the time it happened. And then Madsen's going to be on this for a full hour on Friday with the lawyer, but this is just a sneak peek and an update on what's happened and the latest developments. First off, great job, Wayne, doggedly being in there. Please tell us who the progenitors of the Cruz sex scandal are, how much validity there is to the hookers. Obviously, Radar says it is the number. You didn't want to go that far. You just said, well, he's got some big problems. How serious is this, and where do you see this going, Wayne?
Well, Alex, I think we're dealing with two different stories here. The Enquirer a couple of weeks ago had one story about 5 women that Ted Cruz supposedly had extramarital affairs with. Of course, that's after his marriage to Heidi in 2001. One of those women was said to be a prostitute, but they did not give that individual's name. This story, I believe, has to do with Ted Cruz before he got married. And if you noted last night when he appeared with Megyn Kelly in a town hall in Wisconsin, Cruz was very Clinton-esque, Bill Clinton-esque, in saying, "I've been faithful to my wife." Well, okay, he got married in 2001, but that doesn't say anything about what he was doing before 2001. When he was a single man, after he left Harvard, he came to Washington. He clerked for Chief Justice Rehnquist. Then he went to work for a law firm representing the National Rifle Association. He also worked on the Clinton impeachment issues. He also represented John Boehner in an issue having to do with Jim McDermott and a phone call that was supposedly intercepted and given to McDermott. But that put him on the radar screen for a lot of GOP individuals. So he then in 1999, he goes to Austin and he joins the Bush-Cheney presidential campaign. And he represented Bush in Florida and the whole thing in 2000 with the election. He wanted to get a job in the White House, but apparently, from what I've been told, he was not very well thought of by a lot of people on the transition team that were handing out the federal jobs. So all he managed to get was a job at the Federal Trade Commission, probably an organization, knowing Ted Cruz's policies, he'd like to do away with. He also had a job as an assistant to Attorney General Ashcroft at Justice. It's during this time frame before he was selected as Solicitor General for Texas by now Governor Abbott, then Attorney General Abbott, that I believe we have the smoking phone calls. When I investigated the Palfrey story, and she told me I was the first one who got all of her phone records because she had given a partial list to Brian Ross at ABC News. She felt very bad about what ABC did to her because here they had some of the lists, and then they come out in a report and said, well, we went through what we were given and we didn't find any names of any notoriety, which was a complete hogwash. ABC took a dive on that. And so at this point in time, I'm looking through the phone lists in a very, I got to say, I didn't have the means to do Intellius searches and whatnot. So I went to the public libraries in the DC area and was looking up all these phone numbers on something called the Haynes crisscross directories, which were used by direct marketers to, basically they had a phone number, then they'd try to match it to an address.
Sure, I should have introduced you as Wayne Madsen, investigative journalist, who first got the full list and risked his life to go connect these numbers to public figures. I mean, this is dangerous stuff you've been doing, my friend.
Well, other than the fact that I thought I still believe I nailed a one-time attorney for televangelist Pat Robertson, the other find was the central switch for the Bush-Cheney transition team, which was located at the West Building in McLean, Virginia. And that's very close to where Cheney lived at the time and also CIA headquarters. Later, it became very apparent when Jean Palfrey tried to invoke the Classified Information Procedures Act at her trial, and the new judge on the case refused to allow that she had some relationship with the Central Intelligence Agency. And I wrote, and I believe still, that was with the executive director of the CIA, former head of the logistics for the agency at their Frankfurt station in Germany, Dusty Fago, who was then indicted and served several months.
Sure. So as best you can tell, and from your sources, CIA connections, intergovernmental wars. She seemed confident. Then she got scared, said they're coming to kill me. I talked to her landlord, you did. Talked to the family. What changed? Why did they decide to take her out?
Well, I think she, there's we've seen a lot of madams in Washington and elsewhere over the years. You remember there was the Heidi Floss that had all the names in Hollywood. And then there were madams going back to the 50s and 60s in Washington who actually they dealt in heterosexual hookups and homosexual hookups. One thing I know for a fact is, and I asked Jean Palfrey this right to her face, I said, are you only dealing with women or are you dealing with call boys? She said, only women. So, I mean, there were other...
So she wasn't tied into Barney Frank and his call boy of underage boys.
Not only that, well, I mean, also that would eliminate, of the 5 presidential candidates, the viable ones now, that would certainly eliminate Hillary Clinton, although I know she has gone both ways over the years.
So the word is she'll be with men for power, but she likes the girls.
Yeah. I mean, we know about her and Vince Foster, but now I think it's her and Huma Abedin and maybe a few others over the years. But anyway,
and she doesn't have a good taste in women either. Her girlfriends look like Salacious Crumb, but I'm digressing here. What does this mean though to the young Ted Cruz, the lawyer Ted Cruz, with his old number in the stack? I mean, how dangerous is this to him? It looks like he's already falling in Wisconsin polls, losing some of his leads.
Yeah, the problem is if Ted Cruz were a liberal Democrat, who would care, right? I mean, we've seen people like that in the past get outed, and nothing happens. But the problem for Cruz is he's led this life as an evangelical Christian dominionist. He takes a very hard line on social issues. So the problem for him is going to be the hypocrisy. Now,
exactly. I'm not attacking him if him and his wife are split up and this is going on. I mean, I'm not up here saying that I'm the grand poobah of all morality, but at the same time, being anointed by Glenn Beck as the Messiah. I mean, it's so Jim Jones cultish. It's getting crazy.
Yeah, and so I think the biggest problem is, I mean, we know there was some issues with him and his wife. His wife apparently suffered a nervous breakdown at one point in time. And we can't. I don't think anybody can make fun of that type of thing. These family issues. But my focus on him, I think, is before he was married to Heidi in 2001. Now, how did they meet? They actually met in the Bush campaign in Austin. And she did go on to the White House where she was working with people like Robert Zoellick, the trade representative, and Robert Pastor, who was like a big proponent of the North American Union.
Sure. She's a key globalist, a key gopher of the globalists. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Why was Cruz unpopular with Texas and D.C. Republicans, but he still got plum jobs? And why do they say they hate him? Because the word is, and you've agreed with this historically, Republicans tend to be into the homosexual stuff, the Democrats more into the heterosexual stuff, just on average. And that the word is Cruz may not be bisexual, and so he's not in the whole Austin Republican club.
Right. Now, I think the thing with Cruz is, and I have a story, 2 independent sources told me that while he was at Princeton as an undergrad, he went to Harvard Law, that he was known as a person who would dress up in women's clothes, sneak into the sorority houses, and basically he was a peeping Ted. He would spy on women in various states of undress going to and from the
that's
shower.
really creepy. So wow.
It's an ick factor with Ted Cruz, I think, and that's the reason he sort of got shunned by the Bush White House. And he said, well, we got to give him a job out of the plum book, but, make sure it's not here. So it turned out it was over at the FTC. and some low-level political job at the Justice Department.
Sure, I want to bring up the lawyer who I know you know. I know you've been out with Palfrey and him and others, if memory serves. This Montgomery Blair Sibley has a gag order on him. I want you to flesh that out for us because the numbers are out, but not the names. Let's play a clip. He's coming on the show Friday.
My name is Montgomery Blair Sibley, and I was the attorney for Deborah Jean Palfrey, who for 13 years ran a high-end escort service in the District of Columbia. I am the custodian of the records of that escort service, and since 2007, I have been under a court order restraining me from publicly releasing those records.
He's going to join us Friday. I mean, Wayne, you're a smart guy when it comes to law. Would it be legal for Trump to pay to get these numbers released because... Or the names, because the word is it's matched up with Ted Cruz. Isn't that a huge torpedo? Can Trump pay for that instead of us coming and asking the audience to do it?
I would suggest that Donald Trump not get involved in this, but he's got to have a lot of deep-pocketed supporters who could come up with that. That's not when we're talking D.C., that's not a huge amount of money, $25K. What I know about this case with the records is Jean Palfrey originally had Judge Gladys Kessler as the trial judge, U.S. District Judge in District of Columbia U.S. Court. I attended many of those hearings, and Judge Kessler was very, very sympathetic to Jean Palfrey and seemed more interested in finding out the identities of the customers of her escort service. A couple times she said, I really think that we ought to be also looking at who the clients were. And the U.S. attorneys there at the time really were irritated at that. That's not where they wanted this thing to go. All of a sudden, Judge Kessler goes to the senior judge at the U.S. District Court and asks to be relieved from the case. I heard through the grapevine that she had been threatened. The woman was single. She lived alone, and it would have been quite easy for her to be harmed some way. Because look what happened to Jean Palfrey and one of her escorts later. They were both found hanging.
Sure, the professor got whacked.
Right.
And that's what's so scary about this is they want to indict her years later to cover up that the government was using her. Like, you send the women to prison, but the guys who ran it all don't get in trouble. Just leave these women alone.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. So a new judge took over, James Robertson, who declared a mistrial, and then there was a retrial, and there was a new attorney appointed for Jean Palfrey that the government paid for from the Orrick law firm in Washington, D.C., a guy named Preston Burton. Now, this is at the point in time where these so-called gag orders are imposed because Montgomery Sibley, Blair Sibley, was then off the case, and there was a court-appointed trial lawyer.
Well, I wouldn't want to be Blair Sibley sitting on top of the names that go with the numbers. I would want to be you having all the numbers. Again, I just keep saying you got a lot of courage, Wayne. In closing, what does your gut tell you about Cruz, where this election is going, the hysteria about taking Trump's delegates, whether you love or hate Trump? I mean, nakedly stealing elections now? This is so crazy, I can't believe it's real.
I think Trump, I'm sorry, I believe Cruz, like Obama, has friends in high places, and I think it's linked to his family. I think we have to look at his dad, Rafael Cruz, Ted Cruz doesn't seem to understand his own dad's history. He says, my dad escaped Castro's Cuba. His dad left Cuba 3 years before Castro took over power. But I've been talking to some researchers in New Orleans that feel that they can place Rafael Cruz in New Orleans in 1963. And that opens up a new can of worms, because if Rafael Cruz was involved in anti-Castro activities in New Orleans in 1963, it's quite clear who he may have been tied up with.
Oh, absolutely. You know what, Wayne? Let's do 5 more minutes, then we're going to get Richard Reeves from Milwaukee. Stay with us. We'll be back. Look, it's clear what's going on. The social engineers across this planet know that there's advanced computer systems that can predict the future, control markets, and then with stimuli control mass populations. That you're giving godlike power to some of the most inbred, hateful, arrogant people. And so they're building the whole structure to be extremely predatory. There's always been predatory individuals out there and corrupt elites, but there's also been chivalry and honorable groups and others and just reality. And the world is headed into a very unbalanced, very decadent part of a historical cycle that I just hope we can make it out of. But we openly announcing they're stealing the election from Sanders, stealing it from Trump, openly saying your vote doesn't count, openly trying to start all these wars, openly saying they're getting rid of cash, openly saying they're bringing in a corporate world government and they're above the law and they're our saviors. And their approval ratings are in the single digits. So I don't see this whole plan going the way they want it to. It never does. Because they don't even follow what their own AI algorithms are telling them. I mean, here's an example. I brought it up with James Wesley Rawls yesterday, formerly of Army Intelligence, and was involved in some very important operations. Smart guy. He was pointing out, I said, why 18 years ago did they say at Marine Corps and Army bases, don't go to Infowars.com and don't listen to Alex Jones? My audience like tripled overnight. I was nobody. I might have been reached 1 million people a week on like 6, 7, 8 stations, shortwave, AM, FM, and a little bitty website where I would just post an article or two a day and a photo of what I was going to talk about. And suddenly I had this huge audience, and it was like 80% of my audience was suddenly military. Why would the government say don't listen to Alex Jones? Because some people are already listening. It just shows a disconnect of the Streisand effect. You know, where she attacks somebody because they say where she lives, and then everybody knows where she lives because it's in the news. The Streisand effect, you know, became known after I had experienced it, but it's always been around. You know, just because they come out with the term Stockholm Syndrome in the 60s for prisoners or victims of kidnappers supporting their oppressors doesn't mean that didn't happen before. It's now just been given a label and an approximation. So what I'm saying is the globalists, the elites have blind spots. And if you look at their criminology as sociopaths, as psychopaths, as control freaks, as perverts, as weirdos, they really are twisted and disturbed people. Borderline personality disorders, multiple personalities. I mean, just like statistically, psychologists and psychiatrists are the most mentally ill people there are. Doesn't mean there isn't something to those sciences, but they're just approximations of human condition, is what I'm getting at. But then the people running the asylum should be the inmates, is what I'm saying. So I just have a very weird intellectual view of this and a weird feeling, Wayne, about where all this is going, because it's just so whacked out now. It's so crazy now. It's so bizarre, and it feels so apocalyptic to know we're in the hands of these people that are so out of control. I mean, that's kind of a 3-minute rant there, but what can you comment on about the direction I'm going?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, over the last few days, I was watching some old clips, including the 1960 election between Kennedy and Nixon, and how far we've gone down the drain, because back then the issue was Nixon had a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow, beard whisker growth, and was sweating. But the debate was centered around things like Quemoy and Matsu, 2 islands between Taiwan and China. Now we're dealing with all these other extraneous issues. I'd rather not be having to report on Ted Cruz being a peeping Tom at Princeton, and you know, and the ick factor, and messing around with call girls, escorts when he initially joined the government in Washington back in 2001. But that's where we're at, and we've seen it. Just each election seems to get further and further down into the gutter. I think it's a shame.
The word is, though, you don't even get let into higher-level D.C. operations unless you have had sex with call girls. You go to these poker parties, and the room next is the women, and you basically have to do it to even be trusted, kind of like joining a gang. You got to rob a liquor store. And then to some of the higher levels, it becomes homosexual sex, pedophilia. That this is pretty organized now, that you knowingly have to compromise yourself. Instead of the old days being the mafia, you know, you got to make your bones and, you know, kill somebody. Now it's you've got to do something even worse. I mean, from your deep research, is that an accurate statement?
Oh, I think so. And I'm not saying that our past political leaders were any saints. They certainly weren't. But the the focus of elections and the news media was a lot different. And I think that's, you look at that today and you wonder why we have so many problems, because the real problems we should be addressing are not being addressed. And we're focusing on these other things. So, I believe that there is something with Ted Cruz, because if there weren't, Megyn Kelly would have not brought it up on Fox last night. It would not be, even though it's there, the story's been in some tabloids. I've noticed now it's being picked up like by the Daily Telegraph in London, newspapers in India, and elsewhere around the world. So I think there's legs to this story.
What else is brewing that I'm sure will be breaking by Friday when you join us for a full hour? What else is on the radar screen?
Well, I really think we, and I know you've been addressing it, this issue with the migrants in Europe, I think, is coming to a head. The other issue is I've looked at these Panama Papers, and it's quite clear there was cherry picking extraordinaire going on there. It was just like the State Department cables with WikiLeaks. The initial releases were all focused on what the Saudi king had to say about Iran. So here again, they didn't nail Putin or the Chinese president personally on any of these. They might have been some acquaintances, some distant family members in the case of the Chinese president, some old friend of Putin from St. Petersburg. But first of all, where are the Americans? There's not one American named. And why was not the focus on individuals like the new Argentine president who was installed by the global bankers in Buenos Aires? He's in it over his head, but that's not the way the headlines read yesterday or today. It's still focused on Putin. And of course, this International Consortium of International Investigative Journalists is funded by USAID, which is another name for the CIA, and George Soros' Open Society Foundation. So it's quite clear where these guys are coming from.
And they think we're so dumb, it's all out in the open. We have the story on Infowars.com. McAfee was just on about it, WayneMadsonReport.com as well. Wayne, I know you're a busy guy, we're a busy guy. We got to start powwowing about you going to D.C., to cover some of this. I know you're in D.C. a lot. Also going to Cleveland, and also, going to cover the Democratic National Convention for us. Definitely going to be able to get us credentials into the Republican deal, the Democrat as well, but outside's really where the news is going to be. So I want you to get suited up and ready. Are you going to be able to cover those for us?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, that unlike the last conventions, which were basically infomercials, I think we're going to have like a little bit of a Back to the Future deal. We're going to see a lot more brokered aspects.
Battle Royale.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks had WrestleMania this weekend. This is the real WrestleMania. I mean, this is going to be wild.
Yeah, just like Chicago in '68 and Atlantic City in 1960 and some of the other conventions where, it wasn't a foreseen conclusion that these candidates were going to be nominated. So I think we're going to have aspects of that with both conventions this year.
Wow. Well, a very exciting time to be alive. I feel sorry for folks that watch mainstream television and, feel bored about life. I mean, this is such an incredible time. The medical discoveries that are happening, just all of it is so incredible. The astrological things that are being discovered, the astrophysical things that are being discovered, it's such an amazing time. If you had to, in 30 seconds or in just a few words, describe the state of human and world development right now, what would it be, Wayne Madsen of WayneMadsonReport.com?
We have access now to more information that's ever been available to any one individual ever in history. And I think, although that's a good thing, I just wish that the news media that also has access to this massive amount of information would focus their attention on more important things and not, what Taylor Swift, what color stocking she
Well, we
wears.
know that's all done on purpose. They've done declassified that. But talking to your former NSA buddies and other people, when I know you go to the AP bar or whatever, I'm seeing people in the system that used to even not like me tell me, okay, you're right, we're really in deep trouble. I mean, it seems like we've won the war for the hearts and minds of the people, that we are run by globalists who are anti-free market, really anti-human, sniveling, evil people. But then everybody in government corporations go, what do we do? And quite frankly, I don't know what to do. So it seems like we're winning the info war, but then the elite are still in control, sneering down on us, quite frankly. You know, what they do in Monty Python when they go visit the French castle, they're more than sneering at us. They're doing you-know-what on us. What do we do? Where is this going? And when you talk to those other folks, your contemporaries, are they waking up? Are some of the media people not so arrogant now?
Oh, I think so. I think you just look at this election, even though the elites are still behind the scenes trying to manipulate, but in both parties, the candidates that everybody was talking about 1 year ago was Jeb Bush against Hillary Clinton. One thing that Donald Trump should get the Nobel Peace Prize for is destroying that Bush brand for at least 3 more generations, hopefully. And now, once again, Hillary is not going to be coronated, it looks like. I mean, she's having real trouble again. And Sanders...
Oh, yeah. Do you think the FBI will call for indictment?
What I understand is not only was she running her own Clinton Foundation business on that private server, but she had established her own intelligence system and classified management system to deal with that information outside the government.
Sure, she was running her own organized crime syndicate, milking the dictators.
Absolutely.
She is a true Lex Luthor in the real world. Wayne, we'll talk to you Friday. Great job. Dude gets back today. Let's start planning what we're going to do at these conventions. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, there goes Wayne Madsen. Wow, what an investigative journalist. The real deal. We're going to go until 5 after next hour before I hand the baton to David Knight, our intrepid reporter who is on the ground in Brookfield, Wisconsin, covering that key primary today. That, of course, is Richard Reeves, the guy telling you 6 months ago, 8 months ago, a year ago, obsessing on broker conventions. Well, I tell you, it's happening big time now. So Richard Reeves has got big developments from on the ground and inside baseball for us in just one moment. Please don't forget, history's happening here just because we're willing to tell the truth and have the experts that know what's going on. I mean, it's really not that special. But in a world of dumbed-down people and bought-off media, we are special. It's kind of like if a caveman invents a wheel, he's pretty special then, not now. You're like, hey, well, I don't know about a wheel. Well, we kind of reinvented the wheel here because nobody was using it. In the info war, no one even wanted in 1997 Infowars.com. I went, the URL was available for like $15. I mean, is that InfoWar? I knew about InfoWar. I knew about stuff like that because I was informed. But no one wanted the URL. Now everybody wants the URL. You won't believe what I've been offered for it. So Hillary says they're losing the info war. Yeah, because they thought we'd never catch up. No, we have caught up and now surpassed them. So we're doing great reaching people, but man, I tell you, it is expensive to have investigative journalists in the field in 3 different states right now. It is, well, actually, I got reporters in London. It is expensive to do all this and to have this great crew and to bring you this info. And we can get a couple more camera people and editors and a couple more reporters so that when people go on vacation, we're shorthanded. We need 5, 6, 7 more people. We need a couple more writers, too. We really need about 10 people. If you'll just go buy the products at InfoWarsLife.com, the X2, the Super Male Vitality, the Anthroplex, you can get free shipping on orders of $50 or more. Hillary for Prison shirts are now back in stock. A new limited edition that looks like the one that was so popular but is updated, so it's truly limited edition. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, Brain Force, X2, the vitamin mineral fusion that we've come out with the amino acids is so key with all the depleted soils and the rest of it. And it's fruit punch flavored. It's excellent. InfoWarsLife.com. That was a trial run. That's going to sell out by tomorrow. You can sign up for auto ship, though. We hold back a surplus. So basically, we never run out or never sell out if you sign up for auto ship. $10 off on that as well. InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. And in closing, hundreds of great, super good nutraceuticals and supplements at InfoWarsHealth.com and InfoWarsTeam.com. Now, those are products I don't produce or I don't make, but that I endorse, like Beyond Tangy Tangerine, Pollen Burst, OsteoFX. You can sign up there, become a distributor, get 30% off your first order. Sign up for auto ship there, get free shipping as well. InfoWarsHealth.com, InfoWarsTeam.com. There's also a toll-free number there to order or to ask questions at InfoWarsHealth.com. But our site is InfoWarsStore.com, and our nutraceutical site is InfoWarsLife.com. All right. Now going to Richard Reeves in location in Brookfield, Wisconsin, as the election is here with the big sex scandals, the hookers, the dead hooker scandals, and the rest of it on Cruz's back. He's lost his lead in a lot of polls. We covered that earlier. Richard's there on the ground. We don't see crowds for Ted Cruz. We see huge crowds with our reporters there the last week and a half everywhere, mainly InfoWars supporters. It's amazing. Richard Reeves, we're going to break here in a few minutes, but just tell us what's coming up and some of your bombshells.
Well, Alex, one of the bombshells is you careened into it just a little while ago with Wayne Madsen, is the fact that we have won the hearts and minds of the people. They are awake. The InfoWars that you started in the mid-'90s that I latched on to in 1997 when I first heard you as a talk show host on KJFK FM radio there out of Austin, Texas, we have got the hearts and minds. The only way we lose now, Alex, is if we are not organized enough or not networked enough to win. The Republican Party is like a turtle that's been rolled over on its back. They're on their last, literally on their last legs. They are just rigging everything they can right now to try to not allow us to win in the RNC. But the thing of it is we've got the numbers. As you talked about a little while ago, at the Donald Trump rallies, there are literally thousands of people. It's just they don't know exactly what to do. They don't know about the delegate process. They don't know how about to go to precinct conventions and caucuses, et cetera. And that's kind of good news, too, though, because where we're going to be at the RNC is the people that support Ted Cruz, bottom line is they're almost on the same page as we are. About the only difference between a lot of Ted Cruz supporters is that they don't believe in 9/11 truth, but they believe in the Constitution. They're patriots. Most of them are patriots. So ironically, we're kind of in a battle amongst patriots, amongst constitutionalists. You got the Donald Trump patriots and you've got the Ted Cruz patriots.
I agree. Even if he isn't really a patriot, Cruz, he represents good people. Just like even if Trump isn't good, he's a figurehead for liberty. And that's why they want to destroy him. When we come back, I want to get into this. But listen, the fight comes down to the media being told, we're not putting up with your lies, where you have the cover to steal the delegates and the popular vote, and to let the Republican leadership know, like Stone's doing, we're going to politically come after you. Well, Stone's saying go to their hotel rooms. So the Wall Street Journal came out yesterday, we mentioned it, and said the police could be controlling your self-driving car. I know that's old news for our audience, but it's not just be the police, it's hackers, it's governments, it's the globalists. I mean, what if everything has back doors in it and space aliens arrive that know how to control it? I'm not saying what's going to happen, or there's a glitch, or the satellites all get blown up by a solar flare. On and on and on. We are building a system that makes us totally and absolutely dependent and pathetic and stupid. Where did arithmetic go? The calculator. Where did our immune system go? The antibiotics. This stuff should be used in emergencies. You shouldn't have autonomous drones and robots. And where I'm getting at is the elite are building this. They're running it globally. They don't like a Donald Trump showing up and going, I think I'll get elected. I think I can run against these people. I don't like us having unfair deals. It's a plan to deindustrialize us, Donald. It's a plan to sell us out. And now they're coming in to block you because they don't like it. The truth is anybody can get up there and call for sovereignty and people support them. But they own the political process through fraud. And so this is a big come-to-Jesus moment when the curtain gets pulled back by Toto. Richard, what have you witnessed there in Wisconsin? What's coming next? This is just going to be quite a year, my friend.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to be quite a summer in July in Cleveland. It's going to be a big throwdown. And we've got a preview of Cleveland potentially happening right here in Wisconsin because, Alex, they have put every bit of machinery from the Republican establishment behind Ted Cruz up here in Wisconsin. They've got radio talk show hosts going on for hours and hours and hours on how Ted Cruz is the best, he's the greatest, and how that Donald Trump is the worst thing ever. So it's just hours and hours. And so to see that machinery really be put into play here has been amazing. And, of course, part of what comes with the Republican establishment getting behind you is the ground forces that they are, the ones that literally knock on doors in neighborhoods. They're connected to their neighbors. They're passing out flyers. They're having barbecues together in their neighborhoods. They're making phone calls. That machinery has all been loaned here in Wisconsin to Ted Cruz. Now, we know, like,
and it's the exact
Roger
same
Stone,
talking point the Democrats put out, that Donald Trump's dumb.
well, that's it. And that's the other thing is the establishment has drug out the left to attack Trump as well. I mean, they're playing Bernie Sanders ads on conservative talk radio here locally. And I wouldn't be surprised if Hillary or George Soros probably paid for those ads. So, like I say, they brought every tool for the shed
the
out.
anointed one, I mean, that's the new thing for the anointed one, is you've connected to dead madams. The anointed one, the anointed vampire.
And see, they won't even talk about that. They'll ignore that. Of course, now, if Ted Cruz were to win the nomination, they're absolutely going to barbecue and fricassee Ted Cruz, because
that's their other spin, is that Trump will be barbecued by Hillary. Bull. He'll run her over. He'll run that bug-eyed witch over.
There's no doubt. But let me go back to this big picture that we were talking about a little while ago, how you started this in the mid-'90s. Well, it's that old axiom of first they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then you fight, and then you win. Well, up till 2008, basically, we were all on ignore. The patriot constitutionalist people, they were ignoring us. In 2008, when Ron Paul came along, from 2008 to 2012, we went into the ridicule mode. We saw that happen, and ultimately where they switched into the fight mode.
And now we've been taking over the Republican Party, and the establishment, from the Pope to the Chinese communists, are having conniption fits.
That's right. They're having conniption fits because in 2012, we went into the fight mode when we saw them institute that Rule 40B that everybody talks about. And that was specifically, that rule was designed to crush the Ron Paul delegates in 2012. Well, guess what? Those Ron Paul delegates that represented probably about 25 or 30% of that delegation in 2012 in Tampa, they didn't forget about that.
And they're not going to follow Ron Paul's deal. Good for Rand saying he will support him. And I get Ron Paul's a purist. That's fine. We respect him. But this is about war against the globalists, not just about having a perfect purist record. And I'll tell Ron that the next time he's on. I mean, I disagree with him. It's good we disagree on something. We can actually have a discussion. But I'm all in. I mean, when the Chinese communist murderers are telling us that we can't have somebody and they're doing it for real, I'll tell those Shotcom murdering filth, their mobile execution van, something. Go straight back to the communist hellhole you came from, scum. I'll say whatever I want, and that means Kim Jong-un, too, as well, you little fat piece of garbage, murdering vampire pig demon. We'll be back in 70 seconds, fourth hour. Stay with us. I think it says a lot about the whole Donald Trump camp, the insiders there, that they know to be tied into the info war pretty much constantly. A lot of exciting stuff coming up. The American people are taking the gloves off against the globalist. They want to conquer us down to the individual. By the way, Bernie Sanders about a month ago came out, or I guess 3 weeks ago, and came out and said, white people don't know what it's like to be poor. And I said, we're going to have a meme contest for a week. I'll announce the winner. And then I never really ordered the crew to follow it, and a bunch of submissions came in. We never posted them. Well, they pulled them up yesterday. They were in the email. They're on Infowars.com. We're going to give it till Friday now, so more folks can enter the contest. The $1,000 winner will be announced. Second place, $500. Third place will get a Hillary for Prison T-shirt. And the article is up on Infowars.com. So you can see some of the contest entries that have already come in. Here's the headline: Meme contest exposes Sanders' absurd white people don't know what it's like to be poor remark. We'll announce the winners on Friday at the end of the third hour, maybe in the fourth hour. That way all the great memes get coverage on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere else. But it's not about winning $1,000. It's about getting involved and countering this crazy hypocrisy. Richard, 3 minutes and 10 seconds till we hand the baton to David Knight. You've got the floor. What else you want to get into here?
All right. Well, talking about Bernie there, basically, I've really joined the Larry Nichols camp about the race in the Democrat Party. I think really, we've been hearing this email story about Hillary. Oh, will she be indicted, et cetera, et cetera. I just think that the whole thing with the emails right now is, yes, they can take her down anytime they want to, but basically it's made it look like she's under attack. Oh, please vote for her. Democrats line up for her. And at the same time, Bernie Sanders taking away would-be Donald Trump votes. So I think basically the whole game on the left has just been big diversion, A, to help Hillary, B, to hurt Donald Trump, and then C, they might even take Hillary out at the right time and put in Biden. Who knows what they'll do. But coming back to the Republican Party GOP race here in Wisconsin, really one of the things about John Kasich is this: why has he stayed in the race? And what it's boiled down to is this: John Kasich is basically the representative of the legacy establishment faction of the Republican Party. That's why they have to keep him in the race, because if they don't keep him in the race, in these upcoming, there's about 15 or 20 states remaining. If John Kasich's not there, then a lot of the established voters, they may not even come out to vote. And even worse would be is those people don't come and participate in the convention process, the caucus process, and get themselves to Cleveland. Thereby, they would vacate positions for constitutionalists and patriots delegates to fill up the Cleveland Convention Hall. So that's why they're keeping John Kasich in this race. He's kind of the placeholder for the establishment. I think down the road, if they do have a high majority delegate representation at the RNC, which I don't think they will, I think we're going to have 60 to 70% of the Quicken Loans arena is going to be constitutionalists and patriots. We're going to load that thing up with 60, 70% constitutionalists and patriots. The problem is we're divided between Trump and Cruz. So what you're going to be seeing is potentially Ted trying to line up with the establishment, that 20 or 30% delegates to have a majority that way, or, Trump could be in that. He's in that position too. But the other thing about Trump is he can come across and I think grab 10 or 20% of Ted's delegates if he approaches it the right way. So basically, I see that the establishment is going to have a minority faction there in Cleveland. And the only way they're going to get what they're going to get is because Kasich's in the race. If he dropped out right now, we would probably have an 80, maybe even 90% constitutionalist patriot delegation there in Cleveland. So that's Kasich's role, is to make sure the establishment legacy faction of the delegates show up to Cleveland, to get there to Cleveland so that they have an opportunity. And part of the gambit is...
Well, Richard, we're out of time. David Knight's coming up. We'll talk to you more tomorrow. Great job. David Knight takes over. Don't forget, we are listener-supported, high-quality products, InfoWarsStore.com. Free shipping on orders of $50 or above. Free 10% off on the products when you sign up for auto ship. Amazing products right now, InfoWarsLife.com.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show on this fourth hour. I'm David Knight, your host on this bright, cold day in April when the clock is striking 13. Yeah, that's the opening of George Orwell's 1984. And I thought it was an interesting place to start this hour. There's a story from RT talking about how the BBC, the actual Ministry of Truth, this is what Orwell patterned it after he worked at the BBC. And we'll talk about the connections to the BBC and the Ministry of Truth of propaganda. Of course, now the BBC is going to put a statue up to honor George Orwell. I guess that gives them street cred. Not really. Not really. They say despite his resignation from the BBC in 1943, when he grew tired of, quote, pushing propaganda, a statue is being made of George Orwell, the author of 1984. And it'll soon be outside the London headquarters of the BBC. And, of course, his real name is Eric Blair. If you don't know, they say the inscription that will be there with the statue is, if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. Sounds like a pushback against political correctness. It sounds like a microaggression. And, of course, people like George Orwell would be shown the door in today's BBC in a split second because they are the home of political correctness. Look at what they did with Top Gear and Jeremy Clarkson the many years. Of course, they used the physical altercation that he had with one of the guys. They were going to get rid of him anyway. They absolutely despised Jeremy Clarkson because in a humorous way, he exposed their political correctness. So they despised him like they despised Donald Trump because he doesn't expose their political correctness with any humor. He's very blunt and in their face about it. And I think that's the way we need to confront political correctness. The greatest threat to free speech and free thought in the world today is the political correctness that is being taught in the universities. Back to the story. They point out, of course, the BBC that now is going to portray itself as honoring George Orwell. He actually used Room 101 as the torture chamber that he depicts in 1984. So they take people to Room 101 in 1984 to torture them. Well, 1984 was named after the conference room in the BBC headquarters where he had a severe disliking, as the RT points it out. They say in his 1943 resignation letter that you can find on the BBC's online archives, George Orwell attacked the corporation's tendency to broadcast hopeless propaganda on India. Well, it's a different issue today. It's not India, but it's still hopeless propaganda. Remember, we had the person at the Pentagon briefing who said, nobody believes us. This is just useless propaganda. They know that we're lying to them. Said that at the Pentagon briefing. Remember that was put up on the Drudge Report. She said people can look up the information on the internet. They can look it up on the Drudge Report. They know that we're lying to them, and it's not getting us anywhere. Why are we continuing down this process? Well, that's the way the establishment works. You know, when I'm looking at what's happening in North Carolina, and I'm thinking about the way they push their agenda. There's a story in the New American talking about how North Carolina is being punished for protecting privacy. And as I was on my way into work today, I heard on the news that we now have PayPal saying they are going to boycott North Carolina. And we've had mayors from Seattle and San Francisco saying they're going to boycott North Carolina. Now, you know, the New York governor, Cuomo, has also said the same thing. I don't know what it means when you've got a city that is going to boycott North Carolina. Well, it's travel to North Carolina. Do they really do that much travel to North Carolina? Is that going to bring North Carolina to its knees? And, of course, the big deal with PayPal is they were going to send in 400 jobs into North Carolina. So North Carolina needs to bow down to the demands of the people from San Francisco and Seattle and New York and PayPal. Look, I've been boycotting PayPal myself for a long time because of their complicity with the NSA. They don't respect and understand freedom of any sort, and yet they want to lecture North Carolina. What are they concerned about? Well, maybe you don't know this issue if you're not in North Carolina. The city of Charlotte passed a regulation that would demand that people of any sex could use any bathroom that they wished because they wanted to cater to transsexuals. They didn't care about the privacy of women or children or even men, for that example. I don't want to be in a restroom where women are coming in, and women don't want to be in a restroom where men are coming in. And it's not only just the restrooms, it is also locker rooms. So they decided that they would cater to the LGBT crowd, and immediately North Carolina said, not going to happen. Not going to happen. The Senate and the House passed a bill. The governor signed it. Now there's been a lawsuit by the ACLU, by a group that was the group that actually put this through. Interestingly enough, they said, you're portraying us as child molesters, and yet the group that put this through had as its head a transgender individual who has been convicted of sex with minors or some kind of illegal sexual issue with minors in the past. So there you go. The guy who put this thing through, or woman, whatever he is at this point, okay, actually has a history of this sort of thing. The Senate Republican leader and House Speaker had a statement. They said this lawsuit that has been filed takes this debate out of the hands of the voters and instead attempts to argue with a straight face that there is a previously undiscovered right in the U.S. Constitution for men to use women's bathrooms and locker rooms. And now the Attorney General of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, who is going to be running, I would add, very unsuccessfully for governor in North Carolina. He's a Democrat. He has said that he is not going to defend this lawsuit to try to essentially overturn the law that has been overwhelmingly passed by the Republican Senate, House, and signed by the Republican governor. New American is reporting on this, and they say it's simply not credible to argue that this is a constitutional right. They say James Madison, George Washington, Ben Franklin did not intend to make sure that men could use a little girl's room when they drafted the Constitution in 1787. And one of the people speaking out on this is Paul Stam, somebody that I know personally. And like David Simpson in Texas, you know, occasionally you run across an individual in government that has integrity, not just integrity, but solid integrity. David Simpson is someone like that here in Texas. He's the guy who offered the bill to stop the TSA from doing what it's doing to all of us at the airport. But, you know, most of Americans don't really care about that anymore. They don't care about their decency or their privacy, but he did. He also offered an amendment to get marijuana completely out of the Texas legal code. I really respect the man. Paul Stam is one of those individuals with that kind of integrity. He doesn't necessarily agree with those same issues, but he says this. He said, we're trying to protect the reasonable expectations of privacy of 99.9% of our citizens who think that they're going into a restroom or into a changing room or into a locker room and that they will be private. Now, as we were reminded this weekend with Hillary Clinton's gaffe for Planned Parenthood, privacy doesn't mean what you think it means. And we've seen this illustrated to us over and over again. You don't have privacy when it comes to your papers, your personal effects, the things that are enumerated in principle in the Fourth Amendment. No, you don't have any privacy there. You don't have any privacy anymore in restrooms, according to what the progressives want to do. No, the only place that you have any privacy, the only time that you have privacy is when you want to kill a baby. Then it's an issue of privacy. The only time that you have choice is not how you're going to educate your child. It's not what you're going to do in your life. No, the only place that you have choice is when you choose to kill your child. And of course, as Hillary Clinton was talking about it this weekend, the Planned Parenthood people are very upset with her. She just threw out all the scripted language that they use to control us. You see, they picked the terms very, very carefully so that they can manipulate you. And she didn't say terminating a fetus. And as I pointed out last night, it's almost, I can imagine, like the screw tape letters that C.S. Lewis did, where he had a devil talking to another devil in a fictional thing here, where he's basically trying to lay out issues that confront Christians in their life, talking about how, don't focus on this person being a real person that's sitting in the pew next to you. Focus on the fact that they have funny hair or that they've got squeaky shoes as they sit down in the church pew, that type of thing. And so he's giving lectures to the lower demon as to how to manipulate people. And I thought, when I saw these protestations from Planned Parenthood, it's kind of like the screw tape letters to Hillary Clinton. Do not talk about a child having constitutional rights or a person having constitutional rights. No, it's not a child. It's not a child. It's a fetus. We know fetus is Latin for baby, but people don't think about that, okay? It really is a child. You can call it a fetus. You can call it a child. You can call it a person. It is all of those things, all of those things. And yet, for her to say, no, an unborn person doesn't have constitutional rights. And the people at Planned Parenthood, I could just see them stomping their feet and pulling their hair out. And yet, she didn't have a bad week. Not according to the mainstream press. It was Donald Trump that had a bad week when he said something about abortion, when he got into a strong argument with Chris Matthews, kept pushing him on this. And I think he got Donald Trump a bit confused. Fine, whatever. Donald Trump is not a dictator who is going to be able to tell us what the abortion laws is. And we need to get over this idea that the Supreme Court should be a dictator. One of the gaffes that nobody even talked about, it should be a gaffe, but they accept it. Hillary Clinton was saying, Roe v. Wade is the law of the land. It's the Constitution. No, the Supreme Court does not make law. At least it shouldn't. And we should not accept that right. That's one of the key problems with Ted Cruz. He accepts the idea that the Supreme Court legislates and amends our Constitution. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're going to talk in this segment about Wisconsin's cheesy establishment politics. But before we do, I want to tell you that we now have actually sold out of Anthroplex. We warned you about that yesterday, that we would sell out of our new supplement, selling very quickly. Even though it is sold out, we've held back a small supply for everyone who goes to InfoWarsLife.com and chooses auto ship. And that's the way that you can make sure you never run out of the supplements that you like to use in your personal life. Sign up for auto ship. It helps us to manage our inventory, and we like to make this a win-win situation. You help us manage our inventory. We give you a 10% discount off of everything that you buy when you sign up as a regular auto ship customer. Again, Anthroplex is sold out. You can still sign up and get that as a auto ship customer, and that is true of any of our sold out products as well. We also have Vitamin Mineral Fusion. That's our new drink mix. It's at InfoWarsLife.com. That is still available. We'll sell out of that pretty quickly as well because this is a limited first run. We've worked for years with chemists to create the most powerful, affordable, great-tasting multivitamin formula out there. It gives you a full month's supply of essential vitamins, minerals, and amino acids that your body needs. And the best thing about this, there's no fillers in it. It's all plant-derived or the highest quality lab standards. So there's no heavy metals or anything in that. It's got the essential ingredients that you're going to need for a full month's base of nutrients. So that's something I tried today, and it's actually is very good tasting. I'm going to try it. Leanne McAdoo was talking with Alex Jones yesterday and saying that she tried it with some mineral water, some sparkling mineral water. I think that would really pop it in terms of the taste. But it's very good tasting. It's sweet. It's got xylitol in it, which is one of the sweeteners that I like to always look for. I don't like sugar. Sugar rots your teeth. Xylitol has calories. It's not one of these synthetic petroleum-based sweeteners that's not good for you. It's also not something that eats your brain like some of these other artificial sweeteners. But xylitol is a natural ingredient, and it is actually good for your teeth. It was actually a dentist who recommended it to me the first time I tried it, and we started using that as a sugar replacement in our household. It's got a little bit less calories than sugar, but again, it's something that, like everything else in the vitamin mineral fusion drink, we have carefully selected the ingredients to give you the best quality we can find. You can find that at InfoWarsLife.com. Today, of course, is the Wisconsin primary. And it was interesting today to see a new poll that came out that showed Donald Trump as a 10% lead. Now, the question is this a real result, or is this showing a new trend, or is this an outlier poll? This came from the American Research Group. Now, this is not a poll company that I was very familiar with, so I did a little bit of research at it. I looked at some background. One person who went through and analyzed this pointed out that, well, in 6 states, for example, they did a very good job of predicting where Trump was going to be, even though other polls were not doing that. For example, in New Hampshire, they had predicted that Trump would get 33. He actually got 35.3. In South Carolina, they predicted that he would get 34. The actual results are 32.5. So we see this over and over again. In Texas, they predicted 32. He actually got 26.7. So that was the biggest difference. But then in some other places like Florida, they had predicted he would get 49. He got 45.8. The question is, with all these polls, and you know, we look at these polls, and they talk about them being scientific polls. The question is always, how scientific can it be if they get such radically different results? That's the thing that always concerns me, even though they'll typically say that they've got a margin of error of about 4 or 5%. If you look at most of these polls, their samples are about 400 or 500 people. There was one poll that was conducted in Wisconsin, and it was, I think it was ended on March 22nd. So it's almost 2 weeks old now. But in that poll, you had Trump winning by 2 or 3%. That poll, though, only had a margin of error of 1%. And they had a sample of 6,200 people. So that's why they got their margin of error down. So it's always a question when you look at these polls, just how scientific they are. If they're scientific, how do all these different groups get such radically different results? Let's take a look at this particular one, for example. Besides the 10-point lead, they have Trump at 42%, Cruz at 32%. Hot Air looks at it and they say, well, okay, nobody else has predicted this wide a lead, and everybody else is predicting Cruz by 3 to 5%. So they say it wouldn't be unusual for ARG to miss big on a primary during the campaign. They say they've gotten some more or less right, and I just read to you 6 of them where they got it very close. But they say that they also missed some other ones. They called one state for Kasich, and he didn't even come close. So we don't really know exactly where this is going to go. It's certainly interesting to see that, according to this poll, Kasich is taking a lot of the Democrats and independents. That may be why Donald Trump is so upset about Kasich remaining in. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight in this 4th hour. And, of course, tonight is the Wisconsin primary. We haven't had a primary last week, so it's been 2 weeks since we've had a primary. It's a bit of a dry spell here. It's going to be a couple of weeks, I think, before we have another big primary. In New York, I believe, is coming up April 19th. A lot of states in the Northeast are going to be voting coming up. That's why many people have said, as Roger Stone tweeted out, he said, win or lose, Ted Cruz is going to be dead in the water by April the 26th, because he's headed to an area that is very, very hostile to him. He said he doesn't share New Yorkers' values, and they understand that. They understand he doesn't value New York. But in Wisconsin, it's his territory. You got to understand when we talk about Wisconsin's politics, that is the place where Paul Ryan is. It's where Reince Priebus, the RNC head, is from. And, of course, remember, as the presidential campaign kicked off last summer, Scott Walker, Wisconsin's Republican governor, was the person that the establishment, and I'm talking about the GOP establishment as well as the media, were telling us he was the guy to watch. He was going to be the one that possibly would take it away from Jeb Bush. Well, the guy was as wooden as Reince Priebus, and he didn't have a pulse, not in the polls, probably not in real life. Wisconsin is establishment territory. And if the best that Ted Cruz can do is pull off a 4 or 5% win in that area when he's got all of the establishment backing him there, where they've had massive ads run against him, but primarily the conservative talk radio host, if that's the best that he can do in essentially home territory, then he is done. This is something that came out of Politico, which I think is very interesting. We've had our InfoWars crew up in Wisconsin for the last week. We've had 4 people up there. We've had Richard Reeves that Alex Jones was just talking to. He's still there. He's going to be there today looking at exit polls and talking to people. We've also had Rob Dew, my son, Travis Knight, and Kit Daniels, our writer, have all been up there for the last week. And they've been going to rally after rally after rally, massive rallies, giant rallies. And so then we see this Politico story today, Milwaukee snubs Trump. Now, it may be true what they're saying, that he went to a half-empty auditorium in Milwaukee, because Milwaukee is the territory of Paul Ryan and these talk show hosts like Charlie Sykes or Snikes or something like that. That's a local talk show host who had a back and forth with Donald Trump, and they've been basically trashing Trump around the clock. There's about 5 local radio hosts in Wisconsin that have been doing that. But they say there was a half-empty auditorium in Milwaukee. They don't say how big the auditorium was, and they don't talk about how big Ted Cruz's auditorium or crowd size were. But they just say, well, everybody was excited for Ted Cruz, but things were really kind of drab for Trump. And that's really not what our reporters saw. That's why we send reporters to these places, so we can give you our firsthand account. Just as we began the broadcast talking about how George Orwell left the BBC saying it was nothing but hopeless propaganda, that's what we're seeing from the mainstream media. Look at this memo that came out of the Trump campaign from the Washington Post. This is the headline is "Internal Memo Reveals Trump Campaign's Mounting Fury with Its Critics." They say in a private document that was circulated over the weekend and obtained by the Washington Post, Trump campaign senior advisor Barry Bennett revealed the mounting frustrations among top aides of Trump as they closed what has become a tumultuous week. That's the narrative that everybody is repeating over and over. Oh, it's been a terrible week for Donald Trump. Because, he stood up against some patently false charges against his campaign manager. Don't listen to the narrative from the mainstream media. Look at the video. Look at Field's testimony about how she was thrown to the ground. It was the worst thing that happened to her since her father died. Really? Really? I mean, you talk about some feminist getting triggered, and of course, that's what we have seen with the Megyn Kelly press corps. And that includes some men, like that local talk show host in Wisconsin, Charlie, whatever his name is. Well, I've got his name in here somewhere. But let me read you this memo. It was entitled "Digging Through the BS." And he spelled it out. He says, America, this is what a senior advisor to the Trump campaign said about the establishment. He said, America is sick of them. Their idiotic attacks just remind voters why they hate the Washington establishment. He goes on to say, the media themselves couldn't wait to label this week the worst week yet ever. They said, yet another pathetic display of the so-called experts who line their pockets at the expense of our candidates and our causes. When reached by phone, Bennett confirmed that he wrote the memo and sent it to his colleagues in the campaign. He said, personally, it's been a very hard time. You've got Republicans in Washington saying they're keeping lists of people who work for Mr. Trump. Oh, kind of like McCarthyism. Who say you'll never work in this town again. Good, because we need honest people outside of Washington. We need people who will shut this criminal cancer that is metastasizing all over this country in every issue. Washington wants to control our lives. We need to shut that down. We need to have good people not working in that town. We need to understand that everything is not going to be solved by sending people to Washington, even a president. We need to fight these issues, especially the issues of individual liberty. We need to fight them at the state and the local level and at the jury level. I just talked last night to Lynn Ulbricht, mother of Ross Ulbricht, the guy who was given 2 life sentences for running Silk Road. Now, understand, Silk Road was a website that was set up on the dark web. Ross Ulbricht was somebody who had very strong convictions about a libertarian society. And rather than going through the political process, he said, they don't have any right to tell us what we can buy and sell, what we can put in our bodies. I mean, he didn't allow, contrary to the accusations that they had there, he did not set up anything for an assassination. That was total nonsense. But he did allow people to buy and sell illegal substances, to violate the war on drugs, and to do it over the internet using Bitcoin. Now, the people who actually sold the illegal drugs were getting 5 to 10 years. He had a website that these people were using, and for running the website, he got 2 life sentences. Now, why did he get such a disparity, such a different sentence? Oh, as a matter of fact, too, let me not forget, 2 of the key investigating agents, one from the Secret Service, one from the DEA, one of them embezzled $800,000. He had the keys to Silk Road. He could have done any kind of, put any kind of information in there to incriminate Ross Ulbricht. And yet he and another guy who worked for the DEA that were both involved in criminal actions and have both been sentenced to jail. They got 5 years. He gets 2 life sentences. And the judge who did it said, well, this is in large part due to the fact that he is anti-government, teaching him a lesson. They don't care so much if you're driving drunk on the highway. You better not drive without a license, because then you're challenging their authority. Ross was challenging their authority. And, when we talk about fully informed juries and the fact that people need to understand that it is not just the facts of the case that they are there to judge, but they are to judge the law itself and how it is being applied. If it is being applied in an excessive punishment way, remember that's in the Constitution as well, no excessive punishment. If they are creating laws with excessive punishment, if they're giving people mandatory minimum sentences of 10 years because they're a nonviolent offender, maybe even a first-time offender, but the quantity of marijuana triggers the 10-year sentence because of mandatory minimums, we ought to have juries who say, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to let you do that to our fellow citizens. We need to watch each other's backs on this. So that's what fully informed juries are about. But let me tell you how bad it really is. It's so bad that they wouldn't even tell the jurors about these criminals that were working for them, the criminal government agents who were conducting the investigation, who subsequently went to prison. They knew about it, and they wouldn't tell the jury about these criminals who were supposedly the police. So that's how far away we are from all this. Now, I got off on a tangent, but I want to go back to this memo that came out of the Trump campaign. He said, when asked whether his ire was directed more at the national media or the GOP's establishment wing, Bennett said, both. He said, all of it is the establishment. The press is printing the narrative that the Republican establishment is setting. What's necessary, what I'm saying here, is that we can't let that influence how we see ourselves. Think for yourselves. And people are thinking for themselves. And they're getting beyond these partisan party politics. Now, when we look at this, it's another indication that the people around Trump get it. We've got the guy who was Stephen Miller, I believe is his name. He was a long-term advisor for Senator Sessions, the only person who really exposed what's going on with these transatlantic and trans-Pacific partnerships, that they call them. They're globalist treaties that will establish a commission offshore. These are treaties that were written by corporate lobbyists. Our legislators were not allowed to be involved in the process. They kept it secret from them. They were not supposed to talk to people. When they lifted the gag order, only one senator took the time to try to educate his other senators and the public, and that was Senator Sessions. He started talking to Donald Trump last August, and he endorsed Donald Trump. It's the only time he's ever endorsed a political candidate because he understands that Trump gets it on these crucial issues. And the establishment understands that Donald Trump gets it on these crucial issues too. And let me give you an example of where this is headed. WikiLeaks, for example, reveals an IMF plan to cause a credit event in Greece and to destabilize Europe. This is an article from Zero Hedge that we have on Infowars.com. They say one of the recurring concerns involving Europe's seemingly perpetual economic, financial, and social crisis is that these have been largely predetermined, scripted, and deliberate acts. Now, of course, we've talked many times, and he lists this in the article. He says on environmental issues, we've got to advance the idea of global governance, and of course, to fund global governance with carbon taxes. Terrorism is used to increase surveillance. We have global financial crises. We have the EMU. He says, however, this morning, we got another confirmation of how supranational organizations plan European crises in advance to further their goals. When WikiLeaks published the transcript of a teleconference that took place March 19th, 2016, just a couple of weeks ago, between two top IMF officials in charge of managing the Greek debt crisis. You thought that was over? No. They're keeping these people on the hook. They've just extended this. Now listen what they are planning. IMF staffers, that's the International Monetary Fund, are caught on tape planning to tell Germany the organization would abandon the Troika if the IMF and the Commission fail to reach an agreement on Greek debt relief. The IMF officials say that the threat of an imminent financial catastrophe, as The Guardian puts it, is needed to force other players into accepting its measures like cutting Greek pensions and working conditions, as Bloomberg puts it, quote, considering a plan to cause a credit event in Greece and to destabilize Europe. Why would they want to create a credit event in Greece and destabilize Europe? Well, he goes on to say, they believe a credit event is the only thing that could trigger a Greek deal, and the event that they hint at is taking place sometime around the referendum that is taking place in Europe, June 23rd, the Brexit referendum, where Britain is voting on whether or not they're going to exit the EU, the Brexit referendum. And so what they would do is create a financial crisis at the time of the referendum on Britain's exit from the EU. That's the way they manipulate the process. They've done it over and over again. And as Bloomberg points out, the leak shows officials linking the Greek issue with the UK referendum, risking general political destabilization in Europe. Now, if you don't understand what's going on, understand this. The IMF and the people who are controlling the European Union, who want to consolidate the European government together into a United States of Europe, that is an intermediate step to world government consolidation. And again, when you look at these treaties, the transatlantic, the trans-Pacific partnership, as we pointed out many times, of course, they both connect us to a more consolidated, they do the consolidation first economically, then they do it politically. A consolidated Asia, a consolidated Europe, joined to a consolidated North American Union, okay, with NAFTA. So we've got our NAFTA, they've got their European Union. They're a little bit farther along in the European Union than we have become with the North American Union. We just have the free trade agreement that is bleeding us dry economically. The free trade agreement that John Kasich helped to pass. And he destroyed the people, the factories in Ohio, but he still got the votes somehow. I wonder if the people actually voted for him. Nevertheless, understand that when we look at what's happening in Europe, they are willing to burn down Europe economically to maintain their plans of global consolidation. They want to keep this thing that is starting to unravel, they want to keep it together. And of course, the open borders and immigration are part of that as well. Nothing can stand in the way of their consolidation. And that explains why, at this point, they would not consolidate around a front runner like Donald Trump. In the past, they would have put pressure on other candidates who might be in there for their ego to get out. Now they're pressuring these people to stay in, because they want to try to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get the 50% plus one vote majority to get it, and they can take it from him at the convention. Because why would they do this? They could easily do a deal with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is somebody who has done deals all the time. Of course, there was an article that I just saw last couple of days about, I think it was on the Drudge Report, about how Donald Trump has got some information on Roger Ailes and the Fox News Corporation. Maybe that, they said, is why they're going lighter on him than they have. I don't think they've been going light on him at all. Nevertheless, the reason he's got that information is because they called Donald Trump in to do a negotiation about a guy who did an expose on Roger Ailes and Fox News. And they fired him, and then there was a lawsuit based on that firing. They couldn't come to a negotiated settlement and arbitration. So what'd they do? They called in Donald Trump. Why? Because he can make deals with people. Okay, that's what he does. Now, the Republicans could make deals with him on everything except this central issue. They must have these consolidations that are coming through the trade treaties, through the climate treaties, through the open borders. Those three things are necessary for them to push their globalist agenda. And if they're willing to burn down Europe economically to keep that consolidation, that globalization going, you can bet they're willing to burn down the Republican Party. And you know what? So am I. So am I. It is far too long for us to have just these two parties. We need to be looking at third parties. We need to be looking at alternatives to this. We need to understand that there is nothing in the Constitution that says we'll only have two parties, and there certainly isn't anything in the Constitution that says those two parties will be the Democrat and Republican parties. Even if you think we need to have a two-party democracy, let's change the parties. Look at what the Democrats are doing for Hillary Clinton. The Bernie people have to be doing this as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. In this last segment here, I want to take a look at what's really in store for Ted Cruz, even if he wins today. What's going to happen at the convention from some of the insiders as they talk about the way they're going to move going forward. Before we do, real quickly, I want to let you know that we still have in stock our Vitamin Mineral Fusion. That's our drink mix at InfoWarsLife.com. This is a new product. It is a limited first run, so it'll sell out pretty quickly. But again, I pointed out earlier in the show, I tried it today, this morning, for the first time. It tastes great. It's got a full month supply of essential vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. It's a great way to get your baseline nutrition in. It's great tasting. Everything there is plant-derived or of the highest quality lab standard. That's our Vitamin Mineral Fusion drink, and you can find that at InfoWarsLife.com. It's our newest product. Get it while it is still available. And also, if you're having trouble getting some of the other products, as I mentioned, Anthroplex, our second newest product, just sold out. We can still supply that for people who sign up for auto ship. And of course, we always do reserve supplies for people who are on auto ship. So if you sign up for that, you get the product guaranteed delivery as well as a 10% discount. That's our way of thanking you for helping us to know what our supply and demand is going to be. Now, going back to what's happening tonight with this primary in Wisconsin, we've got a new story that's up from the Washington Examiner with Reince Priebus going on, the local radio talk show host Charlie Sykes. This guy has been in the news quite a bit. This is, I guess, his 15 minutes of fame during the Wisconsin primary, because this is the home of the establishment Republicans. Reince Priebus, of course, is the RNC chair, and he's said it again. We've had these clips going for several months where Reince Priebus is saying in a very creepy way, no, you don't understand. It's not an election. They are trying to join us. And he takes his hands and he's like, join us, join us. Well, he said it again. By the way, this is a nomination of the Republican Party. If you don't like our party, then sit down. The party is choosing a nominee. And as some of these other people who are in the GOP establishment have said, when asked, well, then why do we have primaries and caucuses? They said, well, good question. I'll tell you why. They want to present the illusion that you have some input into the process. Now, you can have an input in the process if you show up in sufficient numbers. If you if you show up and they've got a 20% lead for one candidate, they can't rig that election at the ballot box. And they can't rig that election at the convention either if Donald Trump gets a majority. Their plans are to try to take it on the second and third ballot. That was made very clear when we had this article that was up on Breitbart last week. It was something from a longtime GOP consultant, Alex Castellanos, and he put this out on his mailing list talking about Paul Ryan as being Miss America. And he's going through the whole process. Now, this is a guy who back in January had said, I'm trying to get an anti-Trump campaign going, but I don't get any takers from the donor class. And he goes, it's just too confusing for them. It's getting late in the game. He says, if you disqualify Trump, then you could help Ted Cruz. If you help Ted Cruz, if you disqualify Ted Cruz, then you could help Trump. And they don't like either one of these guys. He goes, 2/3 of the party is in one of these guys' pockets. 1/3 is in the establishment lane. Well, now he's changed. And he's talking about, hey, on the second ballot, Trump starts to bleed. On the third ballot, he bleeds to death on the convention floor. And then he says, it's not going to go to Ted Cruz. He's Miss Congeniality, and he's not very congenial. No, why would we go to John Kasich, who wants to settle for Miss Ohio when you can get Miss America? Paul Ryan, the guy who's already run for vice president just 4 years ago. That's their plan, to steal it. That's when they talk about having a new face. Join us tonight, 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, for the Nightly News.
And it's that type of behavior that spurred me to do the research to develop a true nutraceutical formula that was designed to smooth out and help children focus. All of our children are hit with modern mind control. Television, music, fast food, GMOs, sugars, you name it. Young humans have not yet developed their nervous system and are being hammered daily by globalist concoctions. It's no wonder they can't focus and calm down and then are put on dangerous psychotropic drugs. Working with my team, we set out to find the best formula with the highest quality ingredients that children would actually like and take. We worked with the leading manufacturer in nutritional supplements that are safe for children to bring you the most affordable and powerful calming formula out there. Introducing Child Ease with herbs and calming extracts like chamomile and lemon balm and essential nutrients that taste great. Obtain your Child Ease today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's Child Ease exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com.